To welcome everybody here today to our July 7th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. The first item on the agenda is the minutes from June 6th. Commissioners, you've had a little time with these. Any corrections? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I do have a correction. I referred to Attorney McGill and SD 2151 incorrectly, so that's been corrected. I just had a typo.
Okay. Any other corrections? If not, I will accept a motion.
I move we accept the minutes as corrected.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes unanimously. Moving right along. Next item on the agenda is 115211. Got a few requests from AT&T.
And I'm going to give you a little preface here. I'm going to run through these cases. I'm going to read some of the comments from the first one. They apply to all 6 of these utility reviews. They're not public hearings. So I'm going to read the comments once and then show you geographically where they're located. As I show you geographically where they're located, we'll need a vote for each case. But I'm not going to repeat myself on every one of them because it's the same comments. So this particular request is for 115211 review of the and you should see a map in your packet of this one is 12,654 linear feet of overhead lashed aerial fiber and 3,274 feet of buried fiber. The area is shown here. This is for AT&T. The 1 through 8 are the same comments you've seen for the public. We've had a lot of these recently. There's a lot of fiber going in around town, multiple companies. Those are the same comments. So we've got a couple of extra comments I want to kind of discuss briefly. With all the companies coming in, one of the things that's kind of coming up with a conflict is where the boxes are for these, because every other lot, corners, things like that, they have to put utility boxes in. And we want to see those concentrated near existing instead of every 30 feet across somebody's, it's the right of way, but across somebody's front yard, you have utility boxes everywhere. So we want to see those concentrated near existing. And then that last statement for permitting purposes, so reviewed by the building department when they get the right-of-way permits. Another thing y'all seen reports of water lines out of service, sewer lines hit, electrical, things like that. A lot of that's coming from fiber installations. So we're going to require a little bit more than we have in the past at permitting. They're going to have to do subsurface utility engineering, and that's going to be quality level C before we release a permit. That shows what utilities are there. They're going to have to do a little bit more homework before we release the permit. So it's a little preemptive strike to try to resolve some of these damages that we're seeing. That is unless otherwise required by the Fairhope Building Department. So if we have a reason to, we can go to a quality level B. That's requiring a little bit more engineering. So that is for the 115211. I want to be clear that's what our expectations are when we get these permits. With that said, this would be a vote for this particular case, and I can show you geographically where that's located. So Lee, if you want to run through the roll call, or if y'all have any questions about these.
Yeah, this is not a public hearing, but does anybody in the public have a question about any of these 115211s? These are required by the state to come to us for any kind of infrastructure improvement. In this case, AT&T fiber that most people like to speed up the internet at the house.
I believe Harry's got a question as well, Chairman.
You mentioned utility boxes. The utility boxes can either be above ground, which are big and ugly, or underground, which all you have is a plate and you never see it, which is much more attractive. Is there any way of requiring one or the other?
So that is you've got a couple of different flavors. The utility boxes that are feeding the houses, and a lot of times you'll see 2 houses in one box. Those are subsurface. They do have each company has a different kind of flavor, but there will be some that are above ground.
Okay.
Those are going to be more at intersections, 1 or 2 per subdivision type projects, or And I don't want to say subdivision because it's not about a sub, but those are more sparsely created, bigger. It's a little different with fiber where we used to have the big COs, central offices and brick buildings and, where they had to handle all the copper lines and switching units. Fiber's a little more efficient, so they can handle those in cabinets.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay.
All right, any questions on any of these? Because we're not doing this like a consent agenda, but he's going to show us the map, and we're just going to have a motion and approve it unless anybody has any questions.
You do them all at once?
We're going to do each individually, but if you have any questions for any of them, we're just going to go, show the map, and I'm going to ask for a motion. All right, so the first one that we have is UR 2206. That's on the screen right now. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move we approve UR 2206
Do I have a second?
Excuse me? Would that be with staff recommendations?
with staff recommendations, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay, and I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Okay. All right, the second one is also AT&T, located on the map on the screen here. This is mainly around Ingleside, Edwards, south of Gaper Avenue. Same comments.
Okay. Do I have a motion to approve UR 2207?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Subject to staff recommendations.
Subject to staff recommendations. Thank you.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right,
Okay. Also AT&T, south of Nichols Avenue, between Mershon and Section Street, and north of Fairland Avenue. Area on the map as shown.
all right. Do I have a motion to approve UR 2208, subject to staff recommendations?
I move we approve UR 2208, subject to staff recommendations.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Okay. Fourth one is also AT&T, generally located around, that's not state highway any longer, that is Triangle Drive and Section Street.
All right, do I have a motion to approve UR 2209, subject to staff recommendations?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
Fifth application of one, point out the UR 2210, and the next one is actually not AT&T, that's Point Broadband. But other than that, same comments, and located at Willow Lake and around Volanta Avenue.
Do I have a motion to approve UR 2210, subject to staff recommendations?
So moved.
Second.
Any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion passes.
Okay. And finally, we have UR 2211, Point Broadband, and this is there shown on the west side of Gafer Avenue, all the way to North Mobile.
Do I have a motion to approve UR 2211, subject to staff recommendations?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right. Next item on the agenda, SR 22.06.
All right, SR 22.06, yes, is a request of
I'm
WC.
at SR 2206, I'm sorry, I was
Yes.
looking at my AT&T. SR 22, excuse me.
Is a request of WCTT Properties LLC for site plan approval of 309 South Ingleside. Lieb Engineering Company is the authorized agent and engineer for the project. The subject property is zoned B3B and lies within the medical overlay district and is approximately 70,667 square feet. The property is located at the northeast corner of Nichols Avenue and South Ingleside Street. Staff also received a multiple occupancy case for the July Planning Commission meeting that will review drainage, utilities, and traffic in more detail, and that will be considered later. So here's the site for more context. Within the medical overlay district, the B4 development standards and area and dimensional requirements apply. However, the recorded plat provides setbacks of 35 front, 35 rear, and 10 side, and the setbacks shown meet what is required. A building located in any commercial zone may have a height of 35 feet if it contains both residential and commercial space. All other buildings have a maximum height of 30 feet. The architectural elevations are provided as attachments in your packets and are shown below. The material of the townhomes are cementitious siding, board and batten siding, and shingles. And the material of the commercial buildings are brick veneer and aluminum canopies and garage doors. So, at the bottom of the slide, you can see the townhouses. We have the front view.
Go ahead, so.
All right, you're good. So at the bottom of the screen, you can see the townhome elevations. There's the front view and the rear view. And then the next slide shows the commercial buildings. The left two pictures are the western building, and the right two pictures are the residential/commercial building. It's a mixed use. So we've got the floor plans of the townhomes next, with the first and second floor plan. And then the commercial building to the west is shown on the slide. It's worth noting that the first floor plan of the commercial building is shown as 2 units, but it's actually 1 unit, and that was clarified later by the applicant. And then this is the floor plans for the second commercial building, which is mixed use. First floor is going to be used for work, second floor being used for live. Right-of-way will be dedicated to the city of Fairhope along Nichols Avenue. The landscape plans that were provided did not account for that at the time, so we've made a condition that the landscape plan should be revised and provided to the city to be approved by the city horticulturalist. As proposed by the applicant, there are 8 townhomes, 4 mixed-use residential and office units, and 1 restaurant and 1 office space. The parking provided meets what is required, other than they have to revise to make 5 pervious spaces. Sidewalk is proposed along the western and southern edges of the property, and a crosswalk is proposed at the southwest corner across Ingleside. And in any district where the commercial use abuts a residential use, a fence of solid appearance shall be installed. An 8-foot privacy fence is shown at the north property line where residential abuts commercial use. Garbage is collected in a dumpster at the northwest corner of the property, and it is screened by a wooden fence. Stormwater plans are provided and reviewed within the MOP, and then all signs shall meet the City of Fairhope sign ordinance. An erosion control plan was submitted with the application, and it will be covered during the MOP review, as will utilities. All federal, state, and local ADA requirements shall be met on site, and then a traffic study is not required for this project. And again, as a general comment, the floor plans of the restaurant show a partition wall down the center, which would indicate 2 units, but it's actually supposed to be 1. So the total unit count is 14. So staff recommends a conditional approval of case SR 2206-309 South Ingleside with the following conditions. Revise 5 parking spaces in the site plan to be pervious spaces, and to revise the landscape plans to account for right-of-way dedication and obtain approval from the city horticulturalist. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for staff at this time?
So the MOP is at our next meeting?
It's at this meeting.
Okay, I didn't see
Sorry.
a separate application.
It's in 2 more
We have
cases.
one
It's in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
Okay. All right, thank you. Would anybody here wish to speak on behalf of the developer?
Good evening. I'm Chris Lee with Lee Engineering Company. I'm here on behalf of the developer. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Chris, if you'll stay up front, what I'll do is go ahead and open the public hearing at this time.
Mr. Chairman, site plan review, no public hearing?
Oh.
If you'd like to hear public comment.
We'll have one on the mop and 2.
The MOP will have a public hearing. It's in the 2
Okay.
agenda items.
Okay. Never mind. I do have a question in that case, since we're not doing the public hearing at this time. Where the dumpster is located, is that like right in the middle of the sidewalk? How does the sidewalk, if you'll look on Ingleside, on the north portion there where the dumpster is, does the sidewalk like go into that dumpster? How does that work right there?
So the intent of the site plan is for that sidewalk to dead end into our back parking lot. You're correct in the fact that it does not continue to the north. If you wish it to continue to the north, we can turn it to go along the right of way and continue to the north and stop at the property line.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant at this time?
This is a little bit outside of the site plan. I was surprised, I didn't see any elevators in those buildings.
So that's a question that,
I mean,
Yeah.
sorry.
She's going to speak in the microphone. She asked about elevators not being shown here.
Can I answer that one real quick?
Yeah.
So when we first received the application, the building on closer to the corner was a one-story building, didn't have an upstairs. This is just approving the units and kind of the site plan, what the building looks
So I
like.
shouldn't look at the floor plan.
That will certainly have to be revised between building permit and depending on those occupancies and how it's used. And I would imagine an upstairs office based on some other projects would have to have it.
Okay.
This question is more for staff. We require privacy fences between commercial and residential.
Yes, sir.
And I think a lot of times that's nice, but I've been driving around and looking at a lot of areas where the fences look, like in this case, for instance, you have a 20-foot buffer and then you have parking that's going to be landscaped to the Fairhope parking requirements. And if I were a neighbor, I would rather have my house overlooking, 20 feet of green space with a parking lot on the back side than, a privacy fence 6 inches off that, is not really very attractive.
And this is, so the tree ordinance comes into play is because it's in the city as well. And it offers 3 alternatives. One, a 20-foot strip that's heavy landscape, a double row of 6-foot hedgerow, and/or a fence with a single row of 6-foot hedges. That's a tough one when it has those options.
But since this has a 20-foot strip, would it necessarily have to have the fence if they?
It has the dense plants that you
Still
don't
has-
want.
No, unless they chose to add an additional row of hedges, you get the fence, take the fence down.
Okay.
So,
Well,
I know
that's
there's
just-
a little drainage swell there, could you still accommodate that?
Yes.
Yes, it's not a drainage pond. It's
Yeah, I mean, that's up to y'all. I'm not an architect, but I just,
We'd certainly accept
to
that.
me, greenery, I've toured Carmel recently, and, there are no fences anywhere there with commercial and residential all interweaved, and it looks fantastic. And,
Right.
when I drive around and I look at these privacy fences, and on one side you always end up with, just garbage cans and junk and stuff leaning up against them.
Wait a minute, let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
Our regulations dictate that there needs to be a fence.
Or,
No, that's what he was just
or
saying.
20 feet with landscape so they
Or
can,
20
Or-
feet.
or-
so they got the
But
20
if they
feet.
don't have it, then there's got to be one, so if we don't like that, component of it, or it doesn't.
In other words,
we
they-
change the ordinance.
No,
Or-
well, no, the
Or they
option-
change their design because they got the 20 feet, they just had to put a row of plants.
Yeah.
So I'm just giving them that option. I think that's something that staff could approve, with the landscape, but I just want to throw that out because that may be more attractive there, having more greenery and less fencing.
yeah.
And would it be appropriate here or at the MOP to require the sidewalk go to the property rather than dead end into the dumpster?
Let's do them both.
Okay. All right.
That condition on both of them, and we'll be clear.
Thank you, Chris.
To
Any other questions for Chris?
segue into the sidewalk, I'm picturing all the hospital staff, all the office facilities coming to the commercial use, which, may be a restaurant or lunch place. Is there a crosswalk that we're going to consider somewhere around there besides right there at Nichols and Ingleside? Because there's a lot of traffic that goes right across from the hospital facility and the actual hospital, the offices, that we can create a
I'm not saying there's not room for improvement to the city. There was a crosswalk, but it kind of where it terminated was a little quirky, and the city did go in recently and add that. Now, there's not I don't believe we have a connected sidewalk from where this would end on the north side all the way up, But that's certainly something we can put on the radar and see where we can, that's one thing we're looking at is evaluating where our sidewalks are and where the best place to add the connectivity is city projects. As not Lee's other hat is begging the single tax to maybe look at some projects, some other grants and things like that.
Well, at least if you get it to the property line, then it's easy to connect. When they're not to the property line, you've got to go get, right-of-ways, and it just makes it really cumbersome. Any other questions for the applicant at this time? All right, thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
All right, commissioners?
Remind you, this is a recommendation to the city council.
Yeah, I move we recommend to the city council conditional approval of case SR 22.06, 309 South Ingleside with staff recommendation.
What about the sidewalk going?
I'm sorry, the sidewalk extending the full length of the property line.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve subject to staff recommendation, to recommend approval subject to staff recommendations, as well as the sidewalk on Ingleside connecting to the property line. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, motion passes unanimously. Next item on the agenda is SD 2151 Lone Oak Farms subdivision.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be recusing myself from the discussion of this case and any
Yeah,
decision
thanks,
by the
thanks,
planning
Chris.
commission.
Why don't you just take the rest of the night off? See you over at McSherry's when we're done. Yeah, please. Loaded nachos, please. That'd be great. Yes, sir.
All right, good evening. So this is Lone Oak Farms preliminary plat approval. Owners representative D.R. Horton. Current property owners are Lynn Booth and Wesley Grant in the estate of Linda Gale Majors. We discussed this project last month. It was tabled to gather some additional information. The city did have a third-party drainage review, had conversations with the county on potential items that they were reviewing and may be required in the area. These are the same slides that were presented to you last month. I'm going to go through them rather quickly to get through the items that we have discussed. The last few slides have been edited and added to the slideshow to discuss what was came about from that third-party review and discussions with the county. On the site, for anybody that is first time here for the case, it's at the county corner of Pierce Road and County Road 32. It is unzoned in the ETJ. The utilities, we discussed the extensive water upgrades that would be required to install a new 12-inch water main along the right-of-way of County Road 32, and that those costs and installation will be the responsibility of the developer and evaluated by the water department at the time of construction. Traffic study was conducted with no improvements recommended at this time. The drainage, we talked about the drainage last month. That's where we had the third-party drainage review. Landscaping and met our landscaping requirements per the subdivision regulations. We had a general note for Lot 82 to remove the future Phase 2 area, that a re-subdivision of Lot 82 may occur in the future only if mitigation was allowed and met all current regulations at the time, but in no way implying that Lot 82 will be further subdivided. Needed to include some drainage infrastructure that is in that Lot 82 in the common area and include that within the O&M plan. Sidewalk and street trees would need to be installed prior to submittal of any final plat application. The applicant has requested to not install the sidewalks along County Road 32 and Pierce Road. A pre-construction meeting is required prior to issuance of any building permits. So the third-party review, getting to that, the city contracted John Cameron with Neil Schaefer to conduct third-party drainage review. You had that report inside of your packets. It was posted online. His report, the response back from the applicant, and then a follow-up letter by John Cameron evaluating the response. In summary, Mr. Cameron concluded that he did have concerns about sending stormwater that previously flowed from one basin to another basin post-development, but also acknowledged that the applicant's proposed design does not violate any Fairhope code that he's aware of. As staff, we review the project components designed by the certified professional engineers and rely on the efforts of Mr. Cameron and the other engineers that provide the information. For the Baldwin County review, staff did reach out to Baldwin County regarding what they have looked at, what they're reviewing, if there's any potential improvements, whether to drainage or roadways. And at this particular time, we were informed that Pierce Road meets the county's requirements for existing roadways, and there are no planned drainage or roadway improvements by the county in that area. Now, Baldwin County Highway Department will have the review authority at time of permitting as well, and they may require drainage or improvements at that time. We don't have a full drainage review or roadway review or review of this case from the county currently, but if there is any kind of improvements, they would be required prior to application of final plat. Recommendation from staff is approval of SD 2151 for the preliminary plat with the following conditions. These are the same conditions with the addition of condition number 9. That's any drainage or roadway improvements required by Baldwin County shall be completed prior for application for final plat. And if there are any questions, be happy to answer them on behalf of staff. Mr. Trey Genwright is here on behalf of the applicant and is the engineer of record.
I've got one question for you. You said they're proposing not to put sidewalks along 32 or Pierce Road?
That is correct.
Not even in front of the houses that open onto Pierce Road?
That is correct.
Okay. Is that,
We have condition number 5 is to provide easements along County Road 32 and Pierce Road, and Planning Commission may suggest to alter that or whatever their wish may be.
I will caution one thing in regard to that question.
I mean, we've done waivers in the past on places like 32, you know, but on the other hand, I don't know of us ever having done a waiver in front of houses other than, you know, like on, I remember we did waivers on that one at Trey Cordy's where the lots were like 3 to 10 acres. But I don't remember us doing one where the lots were like 90 feet or 100 feet or.
And this one's a little unique because and you'll see that those lots are a little oversized, and that was one of the county requirements with the shared driveways and where they're fronting that road. There's certain requirements there. And then the right of way, so one of the things I will caution is to require it in the right of way since it's not ours. If you're looking to potentially require sidewalks, the easement will be the appropriate place, or if an easement in lieu of, wherever you decide that. I don't think we can authoritatively say that should be installed in the right of way.
I just think that, you know, when you look at Pierce Road, I mean, this development's 2-3 of a mile, and then somebody develops the property next door, and there's another quarter mile and then a half mile, and pretty soon, I mean, that whole road goes down there probably about a mile. You know, I look down there on Red Barn Road, and I see people out there when I drive by walking just out in the middle of the road all the time where we didn't require them down on Red Barn Road, and it just, anyway.
Yes, sir.
You know my soapbox always. All right, any other questions? Jeff?
Mike, does this subdivision as we proposed with these recommendations meet our subdivision regulations?
Yes, sir. Currently it does.
All right.
With the exception of the sidewalks.
Yeah.
You know, well, just very, very briefly, we've been having a little bit of a discussion. You know, one of the things where we've got sidewalks that are way out away from folks, whether we require them or not, you know, and it was a great idea. Maybe get them to pay in, set the easement and pay into a fund that allows us to put sidewalks where there exist none existing now. I mean, that was a great idea, I thought. Kind of like a little sinking fund for sidewalks and fill in some of the gaps, and we still got the easement, so maybe something to do. The problem with sidewalks and way out, to me, is they end up growing up, and then whenever the highway department comes and cuts their right of way, they bust them all to pieces anyway.
I don't know, it's amazing when you go out there, you know, that way out like Highway 104, and it's not way out anymore.
Well, that's
You
right.
know, and
That's right.
same as like down all that around the Catholic schools. It's just amazing how fast stuff builds up when the economy heats up.
Yep.
All right, Trey, do you have anything to add at this time?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I would respectfully request to hold responding to any questions or comments you guys may have until after the public hearing or at the end of the public hearing.
Okay. That's fine. That is fine. I was not going to have a public hearing today since we've already had the public hearing. But staff put public hearing on the sheet, so our attorney felt like we probably needed to have a public hearing since it was advertised as a public hearing, even though we have already had the public hearing. If you are from the public and understand that we have heard all the negative comments of traffic, property values, drainage, especially drainage, and I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Each person who speaks will have 3 minutes. And if you have anything that we've already heard, please just stay seated. We heard it all for, I think, an hour and a half last month. If you've got anything new, come up and bring it up. If we keep getting the same old stuff, I don't want to be here till 10 o'clock like I was last month if I'm just hearing the same old stuff. If it's new, unique stuff, I'm all ears. But if it's, we've had the engineer do the drawing, we've had the review of the engineer that we're going to get into the weeds with Trey in a few minutes at the review for the drainage. And but anyway, with that stipulation, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Kenneth Underwood, yes, sir.
Good to see you. I'm Kenneth Underwood. I live in Magnolia Springs, Alabama, 14715 Oak Street. And, since we met last, of course, we had the third-party engineer review. Some of the comments he made were the similar comments that I made in the previous meeting. And rather go through the whole litany of notes that I have here. But one thing that did show up this time were 2 drawings. One of them depicting the preconditioned watershed and drainage areas, and the other is the post, the project in place drainage areas. And then on there's a tabulation of the pre-project, the water that will be drained to the single detention pond off the northeast corner. When the initial pre-project, a total of 21.21 acres drained into the pond. With the revised drawing, that was up to 31.626 acres. In other words, there's a 49.1% increase in total area that is now discharging into this Grady Pond that has no outlet. 49, we're going from wooded land to highly developed, from 21 acres plus to 30 acres plus. So we got a 49% increase in total area. I did not see any calculations that told me what how the discharge from the pond was derived with this revised pond. I would like to have seen those to be able to give you the total volume, extra volume of water that's going to be diverted. But this pond discharges into a Grady Pond with no essential outlet. There's not a ditch, not a stream, but when the pond gets to a certain level, it flows first across the field back to the east. Then it takes a southeasterly direction and it flows across 4 property residential lots. And the lot there at, I think it's Phillips Place and 32 at that intersection, the lot right there, the house has been flooded 3 times in the past. There's 2 double culverts that go under 32. If I lived in that house, knowing that I've been flooded twice, and you're going to divert 10 additional acres of highly developed subdivision into the drainage basin that flows by my house, I would be extremely concerned. And that is essentially the reason that I'm here, is that I wish that I had access to the calculations so I could tell you folks how many additional cubic feet or gallons of water are going to be diverted post-project versus pre-project. And this I think is going to be a disaster for the farmland. It's going to be the inundation that occurs in the pond and across the field and then through the 4 lots. The inundation is going to be, period is going to be extended. And also, when it flows across this open field, there's an extremely large chance to have erosion occur. I think I hit the bullets I have.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions,
Mr.
I'd be
Rule.
glad to answer.
Any questions for this? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Would anybody else wish to speak to this item?
Good evening. I'm Jessica McDill here for Sunny Hill Farms, and I'm hopefully we'll move through this very quickly with some slides for you this evening, picking up on new information as well as some of the issues from last time. One of the issues was the application of state law to a planning commission specific as to surface water drainage. And so what I've done here is pulled out that provision within the Fairhope Planning subdivision regulations and have it up here for you that expressly states that proposed subdivisions not consistent with other applicable state law or federal regulations should not be approved. And so you have Planning Commission regulations that also have to have bearing or controlled by the applicable state law. And what I've quoted here for you is a case that I sent to the Planning Commission, which is sort of the seminal case on surface water drainage in Alabama, which is K. Nugent Development versus Hackett, which talks about the prohibition of increasing the volume and velocity outside of a municipality onto your neighboring landowner. And there are provisions within the subdivision regulation that somewhat track this state law, and we'll walk through those. So one of the other things I noticed when we were here the last time is much deference or non-evaluation of the county subdivision regulations. Under the Fairhope regulations, this Planning Commission is to evaluate a project based upon the higher standard between the Baldwin County regulation and the Fairhope regulation. Whichever is higher is supposed to control approval of the project, not a sort of a if-then type of evaluation. So if there is no demonstration of compliance with the higher county standard, the project should be denied. And what we've got specifically here as an example is out of the Baldwin County subdivision regulations 5.11.2, which talks about drainage system requirements and stormwater runoff. When you've got a new drainage system diverting water in an unnatural way or artificially onto private land adjacent to the subdivision, drainage rights must be secured by the applicant and indicated on the final plat. In this instance, no such drainage rights have been obtained. And we know now with the, with the third-party review that you've got an artificial transition at a minimum of an additional 10 acres that it once was to go south is now traveling east. And so you've got a violation of that regulation that would preclude approval. Additional drainage standards that are not met, Baldwin County Subdivision Regulation 5.11.2, diverting water in an unnatural system on private land. That's what we talked about. In addition, you've got a provision within the Fairhope subdivision regulations at Article 5.9c, talking about off-site drainage systems where you have these artificial runoff that is changing the natural drainage and causing overburdening. Again, in this instance, you've had facts come before you from your neighbors that have come out talking about the present and existing drainage problems that they have. And in that type of situation, you've got an obligation under your health, safety, and welfare charge to protect the citizens. So what we've got now, based upon the independent third-party review, is undisputedly an additional 10.414 acres of water is being artificially directed eastward and then south. And what we did is put up here for you the map to follow up on what Mr. Underwood told you. This discharges this additional 10 acres of water onto the lands of Huckabee AA Farms, which I understand is Mr. Hartshorn, as well as the 4 lots on Phillips Place. One of those 4 lots from Phillips Place is Mrs. Wilson. She is on the corner of 32 and Phillips Place. She has flooded 3 times. So if you take and increase the amount of water coming down that way onto Miss Phillips and increase it by 49.1%, you are clearly forcing your lower landowner to absorb that, which means at a minimum, they will stay wetter longer to the detriment of the use of their land, or in Mrs. Phillips' case, very much likely flooding. So not only does the revised plan fail to comply with the express regulations and applicable law, it violates the very purpose of the subdivision regulations pursuant to Article 5, Section F, Paragraph 1. The design and arrangement shall promote the health, safety, and general welfare and promote safety from inundation and soil erosion caused by stormwater runoff. Following up with that, Article 5B2E. If the project does not meet these standards, it can be denied. The proposed subdivision here endangers the health, safety, and welfare in the neighborhood. In addition, we have a road standards issue. I spoke with county staff about the condition of Pierce Road and its actual width, looking at the county standard regulations, which the county says if you've got a subdivision, you must improve the roads to meet the applicable county design standards. Pierce Road would be categorized as a minor local road, which should have at least 50 feet of right-of-way with 18 to 20 feet of traveled roadway and 4 feet or wider shoulders where open ditches are present. Pierce Road does not meet these minimum standards. It is a prescriptive right-of-way, 19 feet in width, with an open ditch. The shoulders are not currently 4 feet or wider. In addition, a very unusual situation with this particular project is that the applicant's proposal is to dedicate an additional 40 feet of right-of-way. The southern portion of that additional 40 foot of right-of-way travels through what has now been identified as a jurisdictional wetland. That seems like not the greatest planning. Never seen that happen before and not sure what would come of that other than significant cost to the public in the event they had to improve it later. Now, as far as the adequacy of Pierce Road, there will be 8 lots whose sole access is directly onto this narrow prescriptive right-of-way, which on the current proposal before you, neither the county nor the applicant is proposing any improvement. So this would be the type of traffic that you would be backing onto out of your driveway from one of those 8 lots. The Planning Commission is directed to not approve the subdivision of land if the commission makes a finding that the land is not suitable for platting and development as proposed, notwithstanding that the proposed subdivision may satisfy technical objective provisions of the regulations. The commission has the discretion to deny the subdivision if there is any articulable, rational basis for the determination that the proposed subdivision endangers the health, safety, or welfare of persons or property. Here is a photograph taken on July 5th. We had that morning rain where it just kind of rained gently. These are the ditches on the west side of Pierce Road. You see we've done a close-up here of the 2 culverts that are almost overtaken. I had a 1/2 inch there in 3 hours. I actually think it was 3/8 of an inch. So this was the school traffic on Highway 32, which is a 55-mile-an-hour highway. I would not want to attempt a left turn onto this road out of Pierce Road during school hours. There is no calming device or acceleration, deceleration proposed with the project. And I would note to this commission that the traffic study was borderline requiring. So if it's borderline, the health, safety, and welfare of your residents is promoted by requiring those calming devices. So in summary, you have a variety of issues that endanger the health, safety, and welfare of your current and future residents. You've got an artificially increased volume of water being channeled onto lower lands, which are already experiencing significant inundation and flooding issues. You have no effort or offer by the applicant to obtain the drainage easements required from lower landowners to do this in violation of state law. You've got a current road infrastructure that is inadequate. We looked at the photographs. And as well, you've got a current traffic conditions that are congested. I don't think anybody would argue that. And then you've got a water resource capacity that is being reflected recently. So we would respectfully submit that the project should be denied.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak to this item?
My name is Herb McKee, 211 Park Drive, Fairhope. I'm one of the landowners, farmers, just east of this proposed project. And my concerns is just what we've been talking about, hearing about flooding that could come through here. Once you pull the trigger on 80-plus houses and the water flows through our properties, that destroys the farmland. The 10% of the world population of farmers, 100% of the people eat and are consumers. And so water's coming across that farmland even one time will destroy. If it floods it, it'll destroy all the crops on our properties. We're the ones who eat up myself, Mr. Hawthorne and others. And that's my concern. I wanted to raise that again. Just go on record and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Anybody else wish to speak to this item? In that case, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
You have two.
All right.
I'm Martha Hartson, 11293 County Road 32, and I have 30 acres A&A farm. The farmland that's going to be over flooded is Herb McKee and my property. And after it leaves my property, it goes down to the Wilson's house down there, and I've seen them have to take their carpets out under normal conditions. This won't be normal. And it won't be normal when that water runs across my field and wipes out no telling how many acres. And I'm concerned. And like Mr. McKee said, we're doing away with farmland all the time, and I don't want to do away with mine. I've been here 80 years, and I appreciate it if you reconsider all this.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody else?
My name's Curtis Pilot. Sunny Hill. I own Sunny Hill on 32 and all. The only thing I want to bring up, I think the attorney brought up, our number one problem is the water, but I'm going to respect what you said and not bring it up. But one of the things I want to address is the sidewalks. The reason why on Pierce Road, I am very concerned about sidewalks. I know 32, everybody's talking about that, but you have a group of ladies, about 4 of them, coming from Stone Creek, Chapel Hill, which is land my brother owns, comes through their property, come through ours, hits Pierce Road, come back, and they have bicycles. And we talked about the land, having 18 foot. If you have 18 foot, you have one of those trucks and you have a small car coming, and you have people trying to run or ride bicycles down Pierce Road, which is it's more popular than 32. I don't know why we didn't know this, but I give them access and give them code in to come in, so for safety reasons. So I just would like you to reconsider a lot of things, but the sidewalks is something that I think that from a safety standpoint, not having sidewalks, and I don't know how you would do them in the wetlands, but not having the sidewalks is a really big issue because you have a lot of residents that use Pierce Road more than 32 and more than 188 that a lot of people don't know. My brother owns at the end of Pierce Road, he owns about 1,000 acres that they do trail walks, and we're allowing them to do it because it's the right neighborly thing to do. But anyway, thank you.
I appreciate it, Mr. Pilot. That's I think that's more information about why sidewalks are needed in those areas. All right, anybody else? In that case, I'll go ahead and I'll close the public hearing at this time and turn the meeting over to Commissioners. Trey, I think the big question that is brought up, 21 acres to 30 going into a Grady Pond without improvements. Is the water being changed in the direction of where it's going, and how is that being accounted for?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the time.
And also, if you'd also touch on the traffic study, do they not require like anything like a blinking light or anything out at that intersection?
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you for the time. I am in receipt of Mr. Cameron's review. I'm in receipt of Mike's summary of the report. So I'll start off by saying we're in agreement with the 9 conditions there that they propose. We support those. There, Mr. Cameron made a comment on it, and it was brought up earlier this evening about taking water from one watershed and putting it in another. And that's a really short, simple sentence for a very complex situation. I would imagine that when that was came up with in years past, people looked at a piece of property as a square, or whatever I own is mine. And I would develop that property and send water however I wanted to. And that would bring on problems. If I took the whole 40 acres and sent it in one direction, or 10 acres, or 3 acres, or whatever my project was, and sent it in one direction that I wanted to send it on my own purview, that would create issues for sections downstream. But with your regulations and the way the county has enforced regulations and the way that modern engineering is doing, we break properties down in the way that they're moving in a pre-development format. This piece of property moves water in 4 directions. So we're not arbitrarily taking water from one direction and sending it all in one single section. Pre-development has 4 directions of flow. Post-development has 4 directions of flow. We've modeled all those 4 directions. We've looked at it from a standpoint of what will it take, what is moving in that direction, and how can we reduce flows in that section in there. Last meeting we talked about County Road 32. The case was County Road 32 is inundated. Well, if that's the case, well, it kind of follows along with what Mr. Cameron mentioned there. That we need to look at other solutions in there. And so what we've done is gone in there and built a massive pond, to the extent that when we release these flows, because what people are talking about when they're getting flooding is the flow speed of a rain event. The photos that they showed the other day on the water flowing down the west side of that property was from a 3.5-inch rain event. So we're looking at how much water is flowing, how many CFS of water is moving down that ditch in there at a specific moment in time. And that's what's creating these flooding issues in there. And so when we look at stormwater ponds, and they tell you we want pre versus post, don't exceed those flows, that's what we're saying. Don't put more water down there than what they're getting. So in saying that, if we look at what our project is doing, and tonight we brought up, the conversation was the water's flowing east in that basin over there. The 2-year storm, we're releasing 25.5% less flow than what was going in a pre-development condition. This water goes out of this massive pond, hits a level spreader, enters a wetland area, which is the waters of the U.S., travels down a blue line stream through the properties that are addressed there, under the double culverts on 32, and head south towards Fish River. It's traveling down a blue line stream through waters of the U.S. These are regulated sections there, and that our ponds, and the computations are in our report. I had it up here last night. It got it with me tonight. It's about 3 inches thick. All the volumes. Anybody wants to look at them, they've had opportunities to dig into that stuff. The numbers are there. 2-year storm, 25.5% reduction. 10-year storm, 26% reduction in flow going in that direction. 25-year, 17% reduction going in that direction. And then the mighty 100-year storm, which is the catastrophic, trying to hold everything back. We still have a 3% reduction in flow going in that direction. So we're not increasing flows going down there, which are flooding conditions. We are actually reducing those flows going in that direction. The South watershed has. That's one of the comments. Comment number 2 has a culvert in there. We're putting in a blanket. We are releasing water toward 32. We're not releasing it. We're just modeling it. We're seeing what it can do and how we can manage it. This project is such a small component of the overall watershed. Your regulations require that we look at a watershed large enough so that this becomes less than 10% of the deal. On County Road 32 at Pierce, where we're releasing water in that section right there, we're reducing that by 30%. But when you go downstream to the point, it's only a 5% reduction. So what I'm telling you is that whatever we do on our site is trying to reduce the flows back there, it's really insignificant when it comes downstream on those sections down in there. The traffic.
Trey, if I may,
Yes, sir.
since
Go
we're
ahead.
on downstream
Yeah.
stuff, I'm gonna catch you right there as far as we're talking about the drainage before you go to the traffic. So one of the issues that keeps coming up as far as our subdivision regulations is adverse effects as far as the patrons' downstream runoff, okay? So are you telling me that there would be no adverse effects to these patrons, the people in the community that are living there now with this development? Is that what you're saying to me?
Those are what the numbers I was reading to you for.
No, what
And
I'm
the reason
asking.
yes.
So I'm asking for
you're
you to
correct.
tell me.
Yes, sir.
you're
That is
s-
correct. And I'm telling you that because in order to meet your regulations, we have to model this thing much larger than our project. I can't just look at what's happening right there on our property line and how the property leaves. I have to look at it from a whole holistic section. That's part of your regs, and that's what's been reviewed by your third party.
Yeah, and the third party also, he said that he was concerned about the stormwater. He said that here is what I'm seeing.
Yes, sir.
And he was concerned about it leaving one basin and going to another basin, and that it was going to end up in Fish River. But Fish River was appropriate to hold the volume. But before it gets to Fish River, it has to pass through several different properties. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
When it passes through those several different properties, will it do no harm? Will it be in benefit of the general welfare? And will it be healthy for those people that it's falling through?
Yes, sir. Our project is releasing less water post-development than it will be pre-development. The flow rate will be less.
Corey, I think one of the things that I've noted in the 2 meetings we've had, they're already having problems. So, I mean, that is, but, and this is basically a field. I think what I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, is you're telling us that you're reducing the amount of flow over a period of time that not going to necessarily solve what's already happening, but it's not going to make it worse? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. That's kind of what I think.
Reducing the flow or reducing the velocity?
It's flow and velocity is a function, listen to me, a function of flow. So the velocity is equated by the section of the channel and whatever piece of section you may be looking at downstream. So the velocities change as you move down the stream in there. So it's the flow is that we're looking at, the feet per second.
You know,
Thank you.
yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not doing any more harm. You're right, you know, Brother Dias, is the thing that I'm concerned about as I listen to the people, they're already having problems, but we don't want to put any more problems. And if we can fix the problems that they're having and not make it worse, that's the way that we should be trying to develop, in my opinion. You know, so if we're going to develop something, there should be no extra problems that the people of that community are gaining if we're going to develop something. They already have problems, so there should be nothing else gained with a development if we're going to develop smart.
You know, I think there's, to me, and this is just for general conversation amongst us, but to me, I travel 32 an awful lot. Probably most of y'all do too. The one thing that I've noted about a lot of our roads in the county, and this is, 32 is a county road, Pierce Road is a county road. The one thing that I have noted is that most of the culverts, most of the drainage areas along those roads, they were put there 75, 80 years ago when all of this was farm to market roads. these culverts, and the county doesn't seem to, the county doesn't seem to think that they've got a dog in the fight.
Yeah.
Part of the problem, when you've got a 18-inch culvert under a road trying to hold or handle a 36 or a 40-inch volume, an 18-inch culvert obviously doesn't hold 18 inches of water. I mean, it just doesn't because of the friction around the culvert. But it doesn't, it doesn't. And the county doesn't seem to want to be a part of the problems that we seem to be having now.
Well, and
Yeah, go ahead, Mom.
the more we have development pressures like we do now, the more people are going to be tempted to develop areas that are problematic because there's less land left.
Yeah.
And I understand that it's not necessarily a developer's responsibility to fix a pre-existing problem, but if we know that the problem is not going to be fixed by the county or a responsible party, I don't know that we are, that we have to allow development there. If we know the problem will persist.
I'd add one other thing, and I'll just speak for myself on this, and y'all may be light years ahead of me. But I can tell you, I'm not an engineer. I can't look at all these numbers here and tell you that it is or it isn't. That man right there and staff are the ones that I've got to rely on, or I feel like I have to rely on to tell me that it is. Some of the information that we have been given in terms of looking at legal issues or whatever, they've got to do that's got to do not with planning commissions and with other municipal or county boards. That has to do between landowners.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess my question would be, if Mr. Jenright tells me that this does what he says it's going to do, and staff tells me it meets our regulations, then am I one to say that it's different?
But in this, I'm not even speaking of those issues. I'm thinking of the issues with the county road and the county drainage, that we have no assurance that they will be resolved. If we approve this, we don't know that will be resolved.
Right, and so that, just to piggyback off of that, condition number 9, it says that you would get with the county and get with the county to improve any drainage issues. Let me pull it back up. It was, somebody read it, I don't have it pulled up.
Any
But
drainage or roadway improvements required by Baldwin County shall be completed prior to application for final plat.
Right. So
If they require
we're not the county. And the question I have to the community is, who's been to the county? Because, you have to go to the county and put pressure on the county to do the things they need to do to make you all whole. And that's something that needs to be done, and our job is to communicate that and to give that particular piece of communication to the community as well. But that's a condition, but I don't know how feasible that is when the county has been sitting on this problem. As we all see, it's already a problem and not doing anything about it. So I don't know how feasible that condition is.
I think one of the issues with the county, Corey, is when you look at that problem and you take the number of houses that are affected, you could almost buy the houses cheaper than fixing the problem. Because if you just, go in there and just open up take the 18s and put in some really big culverts.
Yeah.
Then you cure it for the Wilsons and everybody on the north side of 32, but then the people on the south side are screwed.
Yeah, I get
On
it,
the other
but
hand,
now
you
we're
slow
putting
it up on the
82
south
on it.
side, and then the Wilsons and everybody on the north side are flooded.
I get that, but now we're putting 82 more lots,
Yeah.
82 more houses,
I know.
On top of a problem, and, that's just not how I operate. I mean, that doesn't seem logical to me, just my opinion.
Can I clarify one statement on that condition, for that particular condition as well, and some other information that was presented earlier? I want everyone, and I know we've talked about the fallout and the maybe unintended consequences of some state-level bills that deal with jurisdictions and ordinances and things like that. And I do want to say, probably all around Baldwin County, there's regulations that reference relationships and what planning commissions should be doing. And under the agreement we had as a jurisdiction in years past, the county engineer, the highway department, was required to send us comments and review, and we would be able to accommodate those comments within our reviews and make decisions. So when we talk about the stricter of two ordinances, we would get the advice of Baldwin County's interpretations of their own regulations. With some of the state bills, Baldwin County now has purview to review these cases as well. They did prior to the meeting, and they will before permitting. We cannot be interpreting Baldwin County's regulations. I can't do that without having a requirement for them to provide us. They've shared. They're not hiding. We're trying to work together. So they've shared their comments. But I do want to be clear. That's why that condition is there. Under the new laws, they have the full review powers to do that, and they fully intend to.
But
support pursuant to their
I
regulations.
guess without interpreting their regulations, just at this point in time, there is no assurance that they're going to do anything to improve the road or the drainage.
That's exactly right.
So that's the information we have to use to make a
Absolutely.
decision, that we don't know that anything will ever be done.
That is correct.
That's correct. That's correct, absolutely.
But it's that same situation with every road that they have. Gayfer Avenue is great.
I mean,
Gayfer Road's a great example.
You're making my point.
It's a county road, and we know we got drainage problems there. But the county doesn't seem to be concerned about whether or not they're gonna work with the municipality in terms of getting any of these things corrected so that we've got something to work with.
I have a question for staff. What is our sewage capability out there? What are we tying into? Is it as outdated as our?
This is using Baldwin County sewer system. I don't have a clue how to answer that one. I don't know what Baldwin County sewer system capacity is. They're going to meet all applicable.
We have nowhere to grow
regulations.
except south and east, and that is the farmland, and that's our infrastructure is going to be what we're dealing with in downtown.
I wanted to respond to your, Councilman Martin, your comment. I mean, this is not just 82 lots. It's 82 lots and a massive amount of infrastructure improvements on site, so that the stormwater release is less than what it is today. So what's happening out there will be less than that. That's why we're doing what we're doing. And
So,
why
I mean,
we're
you're
constructing
saying
what-
it will improve the situation,
It'll-
maybe not much, but.
Yes, in theory, it'll improve it, because we're releasing less flow of water on that, the properties going downstream. And we've looked at it, because when you release water, you change the hydrograph on it. That's why we have to look at the streams downstream, because the water flows longer, and how does that impact the guy downstream? And so that's what we've done, is to look at all those things, and that's why I have in my comment, and that's why I affirmed your comment, that there's no adverse impacts. Because we've looked at
And
those
to the
things.
east, you're reducing the water to the east as well, coming out of the Grady Pond.
And the numbers I read up to you were the water only to the east. I mean, we're releasing those numbers from 27 to, percent, on the 25-year or 10-year storm. It's 27% reduction. So those things are in place. That's what our plan is. The water line out there, I'm glad you brought that up, but, the city has a massive water system improvement projects out there. I think they're improving the well on 33. You're making water main extensions going on the north side, back Fairhope Avenue, back toward town. There's plans to run a new water main down 32 back towards the city to provide water service in there. And so this project is fully funding, designing, constructing, paying for a 12-inch water main. It goes from it's a 1 mile long. All the customers out there will be transferred onto this system out there. Right now, when we ran a fire flow out there, we had pretty good numbers on that 8-inch line at Pierce and 32. But the problem is it's not dependable. The line's breaking, it's old, it's brittle, and it's failing. And so not only do you not have good domestic service, but you don't have any fire protection, with the broken line out there. So this project's going to be putting in a 12-inch ductile iron that'll actually, help improve life and safety for the community out there. And that's costing the city not one nickel to put this in. And so that's all fully funded by this project. And so I wanted to mention that, the sewer is by Baldwin County Sewer Service. They are running a force main over there to the site, and we'll have a pump station. The site will have all gravity sewer. The project's all gravity sewer to a centralized pump station. But I wanted to talk about those two items.
As far as the traffic study, it didn't call for any kind of blinking light out there or anything. I know for some reason that Danny Road, it's had a lot of pretty rough, grisly accidents out there, just coming up that, it's always from the Danny side, and it's always coming up the hill from the west, it seems like.
So, talking about the traffic, this piece of property, depending on how the ruling or shakes out, or how y'all's agreement shake out, will or will not remain in the ETJ of the city of Fairhope. But right now it is. And so it's going to your public hearings for your planning commission before you guys tonight. It's also reviewed fully, thoroughly with the county. Their planning department's reviewed the plat. They've made some comments. We're ready to resubmit those. But one of the comments is I need to provide, what your motion is tonight on there. And so we're holding to get that submittal back to them. And then it'll be fully vetted with the engineering department on traffic and stormwater issues. They'll be looking at these numbers just like your staff has and your third-party consultant will. They'll be reviewing them again. So they have a review on the traffic in there. And so it's a county right-of-way, both of them are, that's been said tonight. And if they want some other improvements in there, well, then they can request them. But at this point, our numbers are showing what they're showing. It's just not, it's not warranted. But I did want to mention one thing about Pierce Road. There was some numbers mentioned earlier tonight that, roadway width, 18 to 20 feet, 4-foot paved shoulders. Well, that's not exactly accurate. Travel, Baldwin County highway standards say for local roads up to 750 cars a day, which is Pierce Road, requires a minimum of 18 feet of asphalt and a 2-foot grass shoulder. And so what we've got out there is anywhere from between 19 and 20 feet of pavement. And so I wanted to clarify that in there, that it's a hard number. It's 18 feet of asphalt with a 2-foot grass shoulder. And so that's why I think you may have seen some comments from the county that at this point they don't see any requirements necessary because it meets their volume, because the volume of Pierce Road is less than 750 vehicles a day.
Where did they get those numbers as far as volume? And did they include
traffic counts?
Did they include any further developments in that area as far as the voluminous numbers?
Well, the numbers that I'm reading to you are referred only to
right.
Pierce
So
Road,
we can't read them up. Yeah.
Not 32. 32 has a lot more cars than that.
Right.
So the design standards for it are different than Pierce.
Yeah. So sometimes, as some of us may or may not know, but those traffic studies can be kind of far-fetched, as far as what reality is. And, the reality is, if they're not including all of their surrounding developments and all the real numbers, then something might need to be done to that road to handle that traffic with kids and families coming into this area. Let me just, we want this thing to happen, Trey, but we want it to happen correctly, though. We don't want to just do something.
Do you mind if I ask a clarification question there? So with Baldwin County, when the highway department reviews a project on the front end, I believe every applicant has to come in for preliminary questions, at least for their traffic studies and intersections. Trey, correct if I'm wrong, you've actually been there. And they ask they have an opportunity on the front end, instead of our regulations that allow the planning commission to ask to look beyond only that intersection and maybe look at other intersections. So did the county actually ask for other intersections to be studied?
I don't know, I didn't do the study, so I don't know the criteria on there, but I would comment that I fully understand where Councilman Martin's going with looking at other projects there, but Pierce Road is dead end. There's nothing, there's no development down there on the end of it. Just past this project, it turns from a 2-lane strike road down into a single lane road, so there's nothing down there. But I fully get what you're talking about, what plans are on the books, what's coming up there, and those things all need to be taken into consideration.
They have to be.
That's smart movement, so I get it.
All right, any more questions for our developer? All right, thank you, Trey.
Thank you.
Commissioners? Yes, sir. Day late and a dollar short, Wayne. And all these pictures, you need to watch the back of your truck also, all these pictures.
I will say this, if I can, something you ought to think about. And nobody likes trucks, I get that. But if we're coming down the road and we can't, and we look ahead and we can't get down Pierce Road, we're gonna go through that subdivision. It's public road, and you think you got a war now when they start running trucks through a subdivision. And if that's the safest way to get out on 32, that's the way we're gonna go.
And I will say that even the county recognized that this, in some situations, this helps. When it is flooding and you maybe can't get out, this gives us secondary access for those on Pierce Road to get back out to 32. Right. So, public road, absolutely.
All right. Commissioners, I will entertain a motion if you don't have any more questions, concerns, or comments. My comment that I would like to say is I really think that we need to, if we approve it, if that's the motion that someone makes, which I see it seems to fit meet our subdivision regs. It's not something that necessarily like, but I see where it seems to meet all the subdivision regs, as I can see, with the exception of the sidewalks. And I really think we ought to have the sidewalks on Pierce Road. I just think if people are biking and walking down there and you've got, about I don't know how much footage, but when you take that whole area, that's a lot of distance. I don't think it's fair for the county will never build sidewalks out there, and hopefully whoever comes in next, whoever's in charge at the time, will require sidewalks to be connected to this.
But if they did, that would encroach on those wetlands, which are part of the drainage capacity of that site.
They can do what would. We do it all the time. It's not real expensive.
No, I don't mean just the mitigation. I mean, it's part of the drainage capacity that's already a problem.
I understand. I'm just saying I think that they can figure out how they want to do the sidewalks, but I think if we approve it, subdivision regs say we should have sidewalks. I think they ought to have sidewalks there. I hate the thought of somebody riding a bike and, more people come in and out and walking in there as they will do and exercise.
Even a bridge or something.
And you see these all the time at Fox Hollow, look at there out there on Morpheus. It's wood. You can go right over the top of it if you need to. You're not building it. Wayne won't be taking a shortcut in his dump truck on the wooden sidewalk, I hope. But I think sidewalks should be required on Pierce Road personally. Because obviously, this one gets built, it's just dominoes. Another one will be built, another one will be built. And if you require them all to have sidewalks, you'll eventually have a pretty good sidewalk link there that people will exercise on.
You ready?
I'm ready, yes, sir.
I move we approve, what is the number of this?
It's back in there. SD 2151.
We approve SD 2251.
2151, I'm sorry.
2151 with staff recommendations and the addition of sidewalks on Pierce Road.
I have a motion.
If I make a point of clarification, just the sidewalks on Pierce Road.
Speak up a little bit,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Would you mind just, since we're working with the county, if they need to be in an easement, they can be located there?
Sure.
Let the county determine whether they want them in the right of way or easement.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendations, as well as sidewalks along Pierce Road, regardless of whether they are in an easement or not. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Nay.
And any opposed, say, let's do a hand vote, if we will. All in favor say aye. All right, we got that? Any opposed, say nay.
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 Okay, so the motion passes 4-3. All right, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, we'll take a 5-minute break while the re-adjourn now that Holly's finally back.
Boy, really, you really put a spotlight on it.
Anyway, Hunter, go ahead if you'd
Yes,
like
sir.
to.
And before we jump into the agenda, I do want to make it an introduction. Planning Department does have a new city planner, Michelle Melton, in the pretty yellow dress over here, so.
Welcome,
Planning
Michelle.
Commission, this is your new city planner. And we're fully staffed for the first time in my 3 years, so.
Good deal.
I'm very happy about that. And welcome, Michelle.
All right.
So we want to keep her happy.
All right, next item on the agenda is SD 2220. This is a public hearing to consider the Ingleside project again. Yes, ma'am.
So this is a request of WCTT Properties LLC for a 14-unit multiple occupancy project approval of 309 South Ingleside. Lieb Engineering Company is the authorized agent and engineer for the project. The subject property is Zone B3B and lies within the Medical Overlay District and is approximately 70,667 square feet. Property is located at the northeast corner of Nichols Avenue and South Ingleside Street, and you previously reviewed the site plan application for this project. So I'm going to skip past the floor plans because we previously looked at them. In terms of utility comments, all connections and work in the City of Fairhope right-of-way will require permitting from the City of Fairhope. All utilities shall be approved by the respective utility department prior to submitting for building permit. As for water services, a 16-inch water main exists along Ingleside. 2 8-inch water lines will run from the 16-inch main and service the buildings on site. Water meters shall be placed together and located to avoid disturbance with protected trees. In terms of sewer, it will be gravity fed into a sanitary sewer manholes west of the townhomes and south of the commercial buildings. Power will run along the western and southern boundaries of the property. 3 transformers will be placed on site and it will require load information. Gas is available and the restaurant unit will utilize this gas. The line will come from the right-of-way to the building and shall be placed to avoid disturbance of protected trees. The communications provider is AT&T, and then trash will be private via a dumpster located at the northwest corner of the building, and that is screened and gated. A traffic study was not triggered for this project. Stormwater is collected in underground pipes and carried to an underwater detention pond located at the middle of the property. The pond then discharges to existing stormwater infrastructure along the west side of Ingleside, and a drainage easement will be required before permitting. And a 20-foot landscape strip is provided along Nichols Avenue. Landscape plans have not been updated to reflect the dedication of right-of-way along Nichols Avenue. So revised landscape plans shall be submitted to and approved by the city horticulturalist. And 15% of the site is green space exceeding the 10% required. General comments, utility, drainage, and ingress-egress easements will be required before permitting. 5.5 feet of property along Nichols Avenue will be dedicated to the City of Fairhope for on-street parking. Recording of a plat will be required showing the right-of-way of dedication, easements, and all of the lots. All work done in the right-of-way will require permitting from the City of Fairhope. Required buffers have been provided, and then as said in the site plan, the floor plans indicate 2 restaurant units in the western commercial building, but as the applicant has clarified, it is an error in that there is only 1 restaurant unit. So, staff recommends case SD 2220, 309 South Ingleside with the following conditions. Approval of a site plan by the City Council. Work with the respective utility and planning departments regarding ingress, egress, utility, and drainage easements, and for them to be shown on the lot plan and plat. All utilities shall be approved by the respective utility department prior to submitting for building permit. A note shall be added to this site plan that the mixed-use building shall be restricted from short-term rentals. We want them to provide documentation regarding the maintenance responsibilities of common area, which can be provided within the covenants and restrictions as noted in the next item. We ask for the recording of a plat showing the right-of-way dedication, easements, and all lots. An O&M plan shall be recorded with the Baldwin County probate. We ask them to provide paperwork for Nichols Avenue right-of-way dedication, to provide revised landscape plans for review and approval by the city horticulturalist. And then a number 11 was added after the staff packets went out. by code enforcement requesting that the erosion and sediment control plan shall say that the construction entrance will be 20 feet by 50 feet. So be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Nope.
All right, thank you very much, Casey. All right, Chris, do you have anything to add at this time? All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. If anybody wishes to speak to this item, now is your chance.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Gary Gover. I live at 300 Lincoln Street. There's a possibility that there's some significant historical structures on this land that are going to be affected by the development. I'd be interested in hearing if there's going to be some further investigation to verify whether or not they are important things to memorialize, and if there is some possibility of memorializing that information on the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other people wish to speak to this item? All right, in that case, I will go ahead and close the public hearing at this time. And Chris, we've got one question that came from the audience, asking if there's any question to memorialize anything historically on that.
You want me to address that?
You can.
Corey and I have met a couple of times on that, and we met with an individual from the Historical Commission, and we've had a house mover look at the house, and it's just not going to be feasible to move the house. I mean, we offered that, and we offered money to, that we would spend on demolition of the house as part of that effort, and it just doesn't look like it's going to make sense. So we're going to come up with some other ideas to try to do something to memorialize the history there, whether it be some sort of naming of the park, monument, fountain, some sort of artwork of some sort. We're kind of looking into those things.
That'd be a neat thing. I think that would really draw a lot of kind of personality to the project. Because I think there's a memorial to the lady who owned the house at Faulkner State, isn't there?
There is. That's Nancy Lewis is you speaking of. So that property will be historical, to answer your question, by the state. And once it gets deemed historical by the state, it will then become presented to the National Historical Preservation. We here do not have a historical preservation, but that's the only way that we could preserve that is through the state and the national level.
As a landmark, not
as
a property.
No. The actual property will have pictures and will be historical at the state level and then at the national level. The families are giving other pictures that they will identify and put in that preservation piece at the state level and national level. But, there are property rights. As far as keeping that home, we have no legal sustenance to do that, but the developers, the applicant have been working well with us to make sure that we will put some type of memorial there as well here in our city, to make sure that that history is remembered, and they're working with the family as well to do that. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Gold.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Corey.
Sorry,
Thank you.
just for, I'm sticking for the, Winston, would you step back up here and just say your name and address, please?
Oh. Well, I thought he was part of the development side. He's the developer.
3098 South School Street.
All right, any other questions?
Commissioners, there's a condition from the site plan regarding sidewalks that might be worth your consideration.
And I
Sure
have
those mentioned, if you're looking to recommend.
Your microphone.
Oh, sorry, I keep turning it off. I had just it's not so much a question, but just kind of a drainage comment, and it's triggered by all the other things we've been looking at. You know, we get away from talking about best management practices because we no longer require people to check off the 10, but they can actually be really helpful to a developer. And since you guys are putting in underground drainage, detention, on some projects, you can save money and reduce the size of that drainage by increasing the amount of pervious parking if your soils are right. So it might be, you know, everybody just kind of the routine is like you check the box, that here's the amount of pervious parking we're supposed to have. But it might be worth looking into if you have more of it, you know, does it help you reduce the amount of that underground tank? Sometimes it's more cost effective to have pervious parking than, you know, and so it can actually benefit. I don't know if, Lee?
Yeah.
There's somebody in the public who wants, or no,
Well,
developer.
the public hearing is closed. I mean, I think we can talk about this after the
Okay.
the meeting, but
Okay.
I think we need to keep,
Yeah.
yeah. But there are a lot of areas that require, you know, underwater, and I know that, you know, I've got a business
Yeah.
that I insure, and all he does is dig up retention ponds and put underwater
Well, I
drainage
mean-
down in Florida where the property values have gotten so expensive that, you know, it's cheaper to put the water underground and store it than it is in a retention pond.
And this was the client on, is that Parker Road that's Publix? What's Publix and?
Parker Road.
Parker, yeah, right around Parker Road, you know, who shrunk their underground detention a great deal because they increased their pervious parking.
Right.
So just like we tend to, you know, they infiltrated the water. You're making a face.
I'm trying to figure out which part of the public.
No, the
Parker
Eastern
Road.
Shore Chiropractic.
Oh, we would love to see more pervious areas.
But just, we
Less
no
sidewalk.
longer talk about it because they don't have to list the 10, but it's not, it'd be nice to, let's continue to ask about it and encourage people to use this.
Agreed. Think outside of the box, because sometimes you just do the same old, where on certain pieces of property, you've got sandy soil or what have you, you know, you can really do well by using another item. All right, commissioners, the public hearing is closed. Any more questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion, Mr. Chairman, SD 22.20, Ingleside MOP. I move that we approve subject staff recommendations and subject to, well, you put your finger out.
Is that the
Sidewalk.
11?
Sidewalk.
And subject to the extension of the
memorial.
sidewalks to the north property line.
And memorial.
And there was something else.
A memorial.
Oh, we approved
Memorial.
by the city council for the,
It's in
for approval of SR 2206. How'd I do?
Did you add the
You got the
memorial?
memorial.
And a memorial.
I don't,
The staff
Well, I don't-
recommendation includes the SCR, so the sidewalk was definitely one to add. And if you're adding a condition of the memorial, that would be in the same.
Can we do that?
Add that in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it.
okay,
That's all.
all right.
That's not clearly defined, but if we're all in good faith that we're gonna get
I
that.
think we're in good faith.
To
Do I have,
recognize the history of the site.
do I have a second?
Second.
Any further, any further discussion?
Our lawyer is coming.
All in, Chris, do you have a problem with the requirement of the memorial?
I do not, just, can we clarify what the conditions were and what?
We have the 11
stipulations
conditions on the
for
screen,
memorial?
as well as the sidewalk connecting on the west side on the north side on Ingleside, the
Property line.
west side sidewalk connecting to the north property line, and that some type of appropriate memorial will be placed upon the property, showing proper respect for the history.
Thank you.
All right, motion second, any further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, next item on the agenda is Park Stone, SD 2222. Mike? Jeff Mikeries? Mike Jeffries?
Mike Jeffries.
Good evening again. This is final plat approval of Parkstone subdivision at East Park, SD 22.22. This is the request of the applicant, Sawgrass Consulting, on behalf of the owner, East Park LLC. It is a 41-lot major subdivision. The property is approximately 12.84 acres. It is located on the east side of US Highway 98, north side of Parker Road, across from the Fairhope Publix. The preliminary approval was granted September of 2020. The property is also zoned a planned unit development and had a site plan that was approved City Council December of 2019. On your screen is the aerial on your right and the zoning map on your left. And with the aerials being updated, you can actually see the new roads that have been constructed for the subdivision on the plan. On your screen is a copy of the plat with the site data table extracted out on the right side. Here's a blow-up, kind of condensed of the plat itself. Singular Road does have access off of Publix, or off of Parker, and also an access off of Loris Way extension that does get out to Highway 98. The landscaping, the approved landscape plan calls for a 12 by 12 gazebo on the northern common area, walking trails throughout the common areas, and benches placed in common areas. The preliminary landscape plan with what has been installed out there does not quite meet up. The walking paths have been installed. They are made of a rock slag material. The applicant has requested that the benches be installed once homes are constructed for fear of theft. We do have an invoice from Home Depot for those benches. Due to the drainage inlet being installed in a wrong location during construction, the applicant came to us and requested permission to shift lots 38 and 39. And for reference, on the screen back to the plat are the two lots, if you're coming off of Parker Road, the first two lots on your left. The location of the drainage inlet was going to prevent a driveway. It was right in the middle of lot 38, so they requested to shift that to the south to allow for a driveway. The shift in the slope of the land due to the detention pond made a walking path that was located behind those lots impractical. The applicant provided a sketch with an alteration which showed 2 additional pavilions, some additional trees and flower beds, which staff supported. Currently on site, there's one pavilion around lots 38 and 39, and one small pavilion located where the gazebo was shown. On the screen on the left is what was existing, and on the right was the proposed. This is what was presented to us to look at. You can see on the right side of your screen the proposed behind lots 38 and 39. The trail has been removed from behind it. There's very little room. They call out 3.75 feet between the lot corner and the property line on the east. For that, staff requested that some additional landscaping be installed around that lot 39 to go with the pavilions located on either side, and that the pavilion located on the top side of lot 38 not be located on top of that 15-foot drainage easement where the pipe is going into the pond. The landscape plan here in whole, broken up into sections with the preliminary plan, also with what was supplied to us. This was the altered plan, removing the trail and some additional plantings being added. It's hard to see here, but there were, I believe, 9 or 10 additional trees that were added, and we'll be able to see those in greater detail on the next few slides, and also a row of ligustrum planted on the west side of the large detention pond. This is the southern portion of the site. Looking left to right, comparing the two together, you can see there were some additional trees planted in the common area at the entrance, and the common area further to the right around the walking trail where some trees were located and or added. You can see there, it's showing on here, there's still 2 benches on the northern walking trail and a single bench on the lower walking trail on the west side of the property. Again, the middle section of the landscaping, a little harder to see. Some of the existing trees are highlighted black on what was given to us for the application. Again, there are a couple of trees that were removed from one detention area, but the addition of some other trees. Called out on the bottom right hand of the screen is the location of that 12 by 12 gazebo mentioned earlier. It was referred to in detail as a gable roof, rough sawn timber post, beams, rafters, metal roof, and in its place currently is that one wooden open pavilion. On the screen blown up again is that detail with the pavilion that's in the location, presumed to be where it's shown on the landscape plan.
In our Rotary Club, that'd be a $5 fine. So
It's coming from behind, I think it's coming from behind the wall over there. The final northern end of the property, none of the landscaping was altered. It was just street trees and lots that were bordered on the north. The preliminary green space plan is shown below. Again, this included the walking trail behind lots 38 and 39 with the one gazebo. In areas in green is what was counted for green space for this development. Green space required 20% green space, and I believe that was 2.54 acres, and I think exactly the 2.54 acres were provided as green space. Water and sewer comments. The applicant, this previous legal history of the property was an old mobile home park. The mobile homes were removed, a lot of the services removed, but the applicant was allowed to use some of the existing infrastructure for the development. A final inspection was performed, and some outstanding items do remain. Again, these are the water and sewer comments, and at this time, the developer was requesting items 2, 3, and 5 be removed from the punch list, which is on another slide we'll get to in just a second. The road to the lift station, it's currently gravel and had some areas of washout and erosion at the time of inspection. The applicant has come back and lined the drainage swell that is located there with a filter cloth and riprap. Due to staff's concerns of this not being a permanent fix, the city does reserve the right to re-inspect the road after 6 months, and at the discretion of the water and sewer superintendent, require a new solution, which could include an asphalt or concrete drive be installed in the easement to service the lift station at the developer's expense. Previously, the lift station did have a asphalt drive located off of one of the older roads that was in the mobile home park to get to that lift station. For public works, not a lot of comments. Most of those were resolved. They do have drainage inlets that have some open tops and needed safety grates installed. The applicant has agreed to install those, but needs time to have them fabricated. We just don't have an estimated time of when that can be provided. The punch list items labeled as incomplete are as follows. Again, the items that are in red were items that the applicant had requested to be removed or is in disagreement over. The item is in black. Provide an invoice for missing chimney seal. That's a simple fix for that. We talked about the safety grates on the pond inlets. Need to abandon a 6-inch sewer line that's coming from the wet well headed northwest, needs to be capped off. It's currently allowing water department believes water and debris to get back into the lift station. There was a drainage easement that needed to be increased, so staff needs those documents showing where that easement has actually been granted, so we can reflect and show that record instrument number on the plat. Number 8 and 9 is the gazebo and pavilion we were speaking of, and then number 10 was we needed a copy of an invoice. That has been satisfied. As I said, we do have an invoice from Home Depot for those benches. Staff's recommendation is denial of SD 22.22 Parkstone subdivision at East Park. It does not meet the preliminary landscape plans. There are several items that are incomplete and don't have a time frame of when they will be complete, and items that a developer has indicated to us that did not desire to complete. And we don't feel that that final plat application is actually a final subdivision ready for final plat approval.
Why is this in front of us?
From pressure from the developer to get this on the agenda, we've been looking
why
at
is this even on the agenda is what I'm wondering. I mean, with the long program, I mean, Lord, this isn't preliminary plat approval.
Correct.
And I mean, there were items that weren't done, that weren't correct on the preliminary plat that y'all been over backwards to meet with, and I'm just wondering, I mean, does this need to go back to preliminary plat and start again? I mean, if I've been here 30, close to 30 years, I've never once seen a denial on a final plat. Never once seen one. And I just wonder, I mean, if we deny it, then what does it come back with the preliminary plat and you have to redraw it again?
If it gets denied, they can come back for a new application for final plat addressing the items.
When they come back for final plat, or would they have to come back and redraw it for preliminary?
Final.
Yes, there was some substantial.
I mean, my question is, what grandfathers them in from when this was done to now, where they wouldn't have to meet the current, this is one that we changed the green space requirements because of, and it barely met it. And then when the lots get moved around because the drainage was put in the wrong place, it, didn't even meet the green space requirements and doesn't
When we
meet the green
required them
space
to add a
requirements.
trail, and now they've chopped the trail into two little dead-end traillets because of the
Just
shifting
try,
of the
try to hit the
lots.
green space that didn't even hit. So my question is, this thing, because of the changes, doesn't hit the, doesn't even meet the preliminary plat approvals. If we looked at it today, we'd probably deny it on preliminary plat. And now we're sitting here looking at it for final plat and doesn't want to install a couple of gazebos on it.
And let me come back up there, because this was a PUD. So for the green space, those exceptions were made in the green.
I can't hear you, Hunter.
Sorry. Second time tonight. This was an approved PUD, and I got chastised for supporting barely meeting green space requirements. We've made some changes since then. So that was the site plan. So final plat coming back can be done, and any applicant can come straight in and ask for final plat. Risk on development and all those costs to get denied is completely onto them. So,
But
Yeah.
some of the requirements in our, like we required a trail, I guess we have some form of it. Some of the requirements aren't really being met.
So, and
That
let's
were
kind
met
of
in the
give,
drawings.
this is kind of why we're here. We're seeing a lot of projects with the volume of what we're doing, and we're spending a lot of time debating details. And that's kind of why we're here. Y'all, have mentioned many times, why does that not look like we've approved it? And it's kind of tough sometimes as a plane, you get put in a tight spot.
We're trying to be so nice. And when you sit there and you got a walking trail that goes around on a PUD and a drain gets put in the wrong place, and then you say, instead of making you move the drain and put it back like it should be and spending thousands of dollars, and then somebody doesn't want to put a gazebo in, and I don't know who the
There should
developer
never
is,
be
I
a
haven't looked
debate.
at the
We shouldn't have
developer.
to talk about that
And
if
it's
we
like,
make
and I don't want to put in,
allowances.
you say be $50,000 or 20 or 10 or 15 redoing a drain, and I don't want to put in a $1,500 gazebo. I just don't, and then we're here. But let it roll. I'm ready to vote right now, but I guess I better we got to do a public hearing first.
Public hearing.
Not finished the hearing. Okay.
Lee, correct me, y'all might correct me, was this not zoned and this was going to be Bayshore Christian School?
It was, and then they bought some other property. This has come, I've been on here for, 20-plus years, and this has had
But I
three
mean, that's what-
subdivisions, three subdivisions come to us, Bayshore School, and then finally this. It's first time it's been, dirt's been moved out there, but it's been come in front of us a number of times.
Bayshore bought some acreage off of
Right.
13.
I just remember the rezoning of it from that. We can go ahead and open the hearing if you're ready.
Yeah, all right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Well, actually, does the developer have anything they want to add at this time? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Tom Granger, Sawgrass Consulting. I just want to address a few issues, and then the owner, Chris Brewer, and Matt Sankey, I think, want to discuss some of the landscaping issues. On the comments on the three things that they wanted removed, let me expand on that. Item 2, clean out the wet well. That was we did that in April. That was from a preliminary inspection, and we did pump out that wet well back in April. And it came up again, but we haven't been putting anything in it. So that was, we just asked to be considered that it not be, have to do that again. Item 3, actually item 3 and 5, well, let me start with 3. There was an existing lift station where, that was privately built, and then the city took it over at some point. I'm not sure when. So it didn't really meet the city code as it is, because it was an older type subdivision. When we were constructing it, we did not find, there was not an existing 3/4 inch service line to that lift station. The owner is willing to put in the line. We need some direction of where it goes, where they want it, because it doesn't, if you look at the standard drawings from Fairhope Water and Sewer, you can't see this lift station. It doesn't exist. But the developer would ask respectfully if the city would do the tap, he can install, I think it's about 200 feet of the service line. In item 5, we've reached out to the Fairhope Water and Sewer again, and we just haven't been able to coordinate a time to meet. The standard drawing requires a 50 by 50 fence around a standard lift station. And again, we're working with something that's already existing. We can't put a 50 by 50 fence around this structure. So our question is, how would they like that fence oriented? Because it's just a unique site. It wasn't they want to take it off. We need some direction on how and where to put that fence. There was some issues with the landscape plans. Some of it's my fault. Coordination between myself and the landscape architect on the as-bills was not handled very well. We can fix that.
Should we just do a 30-day, just hold this, I mean, I go ahead and open the public hearing, and then we just hold this over for 30 days, to the next meeting. The next meeting's less than 30 days, and then y'all can get together with the city and work all those details out, or?
If that's the.
I can't answer utility questions, but I don't want to debate anymore.
Okay.
Staff at planning, and when we get sandwiched in a lot of.
Well, I'm not so much saying debate, I'm just saying, get this punch list done. I mean, if they need to know where to put the fence, I go out there with some paint and hit if you want me to, but.
Right.
For as much as this has been batted around, to me, and this is, I'm with you. I don't know that I've ever, in 20-something years I've been doing this, I don't know if I've ever seen a denial recommended for a final plat. But at the same time, it's kind of our first shot back at the final plat, and I think I'm hearing what I think I hear you saying. Give them till the next meeting, which is less than 30 days, and we can postpone it for that long. And if they don't have it all fixed, I can't say that we can just say it here, because we'd have to look at it. But my attitude about it would be there won't be any addition.
Well, that's my thought, just, come back in 30 days and, have it fixed.
Yeah.
Let me just say one thing, because I think Matt Sankey, we didn't refuse to put in the gazebo at all. I went and met with staff when we moved the little walking trail and came up with a long list of items to improve the landscape plan. And it was fairly expensive. I wasn't trying just to replace 150 feet in another spot. I came up with a long list of things. And so I didn't refuse to do the gazebo. We had suggested 2 at the meeting. And when the plans came from Tom, it showed 3. And so we thought we had addressed that with staff in a meeting where we were going to build 2 instead of 1 of a slightly different design. We were going to plant 36 ligustrums. We were going to change the material for the walkway from what mulch was shown, which they didn't want. And so I wasn't refusing to build anything. I was trying to get through this list, but there was some confusion on what we showed Mike on the as-bills. They were inaccurate.
Yeah.
That sounds to me like more of an issue between you and Tom Granger than with
Sure.
the staff. And
We're just saying.
That's
I
y'all.
agree.
That's
Well,
y'all
they let 'em move the
issue.
lots.
Yeah, Corey, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Real quick, pronounce the last name again.
Sankey, Matt Sankey.
Okay. Mr. Sankey, Corey Martin, nice to meet
Hey,
you.
Corey.
The trails, the green space issue, in 30 days, you'll be able to resolve that issue that we keep bouncing around?
Oh, certainly, sure.
And you're not gonna chop the trails up like we're seeing here?
So let me be clear about what's at stake here. We administratively, so I'm tasked a lot of times when things get done, making quick on the fly. And,
Right.
and when this happened, everybody's under construction and wanting an answer. I think I got a few emails before we got a chance to sit down and evaluate and look at what was going on. So I did administratively approve the trail to be broken because I'm trying to work with people when appropriate. We're past that, but what I have a frustration with is what we see and what we agree to, and then that's not done, and then we're debating it for 4 months.
So we'll trust you with, I got you.
It was in a horrible place. It was in a it was on a slope, it wouldn't have been utilized.
And then what I learned is if we ever have another situation like this where we're pushing up this tight to the green space limits, we need more, and I think we've been talked about this with other projects that are PUDs. It does give us an allowance to make some changes and interpret the green space.
Yeah.
We need to make sure there's more, so when things happen in reality, we're not pushing up against some other issues.
Yeah, because that lot's kissing, the other, the commercial building is the one I just mentioned earlier. Now it's smushed up against it. I mean, that's a significant change, negative change.
The walkway being removed, you're saying?
The lot shifting so that it's a couple of feet away from your property line. And so somebody will build their residential fence, that then the adjacent neighbor gets to
If
to
we
look
moved
at.
it 8 feet south toward Parker Road.
Yeah, so
Yes,
it's like,
ma'am.
2.5 feet off the property? Too small?
375.
Too small for a trail to pass around it.
Right.
And it's on a slope.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Anybody from the public wish to speak to this item?
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Gary Gober. I live at 300 Lincoln Street in Fairhope. When I think about this development and the things around it in the North Fairhope Village Center, I get concerned about the pedestrian and bicycle kinds of connectivity across, let's say, Parker Road over towards Publix and so on. I feel that there's going to be a lot of foot or bicycle traffic back and forth through there. I don't know that anything that exists is safe or makes any sense. It's a kind of a complicated layout. And it's complicated by the fire station, which is up the street on Parker, when they have to respond to a call, or volunteers have to race in to get to the truck and so on. I'd see that as a complication. It also should have some kind of connection to the footpath facility that goes up along Greeno, north towards Rock Creek. And I don't know how access is provided going toward the west through the little business area and so on to get to that path. So I think there's some related issues in the larger community that are going to be affected by putting this development in there. I don't know if we've identified all the things that the city should be looking at to take care of that.
Right.
Thanks.
Yes, sir, thank you. That would be more.
For this site on connectivity, if you've driven out there and been by the entrance and looked at it, you'll notice there's a crosswalk that goes to Publix that gets you across the street to their sidewalk. There's a sidewalk that is on their side of the street that leads back down towards Greeno, that gets you back towards the gas station and that commercial section that is
Heading
there.
north.
And heading north. So the
I will
sidewalk.
say,
And
I have had
that's
some
more of a
concern.
pre-plat, preliminary
And
plat.
I will have, we've had some questions about, and as more development happens down Parker Road, it's already approved in a PUD, getting across Greeno from a pedestrian is something we kind of need to take a look at as a city.
Sure.
But it is connecting to existing sidewalk networks on that east side of Greeno Road, both the north and south of Parker Road.
Well, crossing Greeno is a problem
That's a problem
everywhere that-
anywhere on
yeah.
pedestrian that connects.
It's terrible.
All right, well, I'll close the public hearing, Commissioners. We can either we can either make a motion to approve, to deny, or to postpone.
Motion, Mr. Chairman, I move for SD 22.22 Parkstone that we table this until the next meeting, which is less than 30 days.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor to table, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed not to table, say aye.
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 Were you asking
Not to table.
To table,
not to table?
yes. Okay, let's do a hand vote on this. If you are voting to table, raise your hand, please. All right, if you're voting to deny, raise your hand, please. All right, and I'll just say one thing. If you notice, that passed by the nitty-gritty, and I can just tell you that there's not a lot of patience if it's not, you know,
Bad precedent.
if these things aren't, you know, I mean, I barely voted just to be nice, to table it. And if everything, you know, I mean, we're past the let's talk to staff time. I mean, if it's not done, it's just don't even show up next month, you know, all I'll say. All right, next item on the agenda is SD 2223, public hearing to consider the request of Mullins LLC acting on behalf of the owner of Leonard Homes, Alabama for a final plat approval of Live Oaks Estates.
So he said this is a public hearing. The applicant is Mullins LLC, acting on behalf of the owner, Lennar Homes of Alabama LLC, for final plat approval of Live Oak Estates. This is a 76-lot major subdivision. Property is approximately 33.66 acres, located at the southwest corner of State Highway 181 and Bay Meadows Avenue. The property is zoned planned unit development and has an approved site plan. On your screen is the zoning on the left, the aerial on the right. Again, a recent aerial, you can kind of see an overview of what the development looks like with the roads cut out. Copy of the plat on the screen. North is to your left, not up and down. This subdivision does connect to Twin Beach Estates, which connects to Twin Beach Road further south. A blow-up of their site table with the setbacks reflecting what was approved during their PUD. Green space required 10%, and I believe their overall green space ended up somewhere around the 15 to 17%. Some of the comments, this is a final plat. The asphalt testing came back and failed 7 out of 17 of the core samples, which did not meet the minimum standards. The applicant will be required to add a 1-inch overlayment of asphalt and supply new test reports to be approved by the Public Works Director. Comment 2 is the back T test. They need to be redone. However, due to the recent water conditions of Fairhope, the Water Department has currently suspended doing the test at that time. The applicant is coordinating with the Water Department to have that test performed as soon as possible. We'll mention they passed their first round of back T test. The valves were inadvertently shut off in the development, which caused the water inside to kind of have an odor and not pass, being shut off. So we're requiring that test to be redone. The common area trees and landscaping have been installed. The pond was proposed as a stocked pond for fishing. Currently, the pond has not been stocked. The final plat must be recorded within 120 days after the date of final approval. Any sidewalks and street trees not installed do have a performance bond and performance bond agreement to be installed within the 2 years. The engineer has provided his engineer's certificate of design and construction for improvements constructed for the subdivision, and shall sign the plat once the road deficiencies are corrected. Current walking trails are mowed paths. Staff requests a more substantial primitive walking trail. The current owner, as kind of a clarification, is different from the one shown on Baldwin County parcel view. Staff will need confirmation that Lennar Homes of Alabama is the current owner. Some additional comments that I failed to make it into the actual staff report. We discussed this at length during the PUD actually, and the preliminary review, was anything required out there at by ALDOT on 181. Through that, we did reference that there would be a northbound left turn lane that would be triggered by this development. This is right across from the Firethorn development. There, on the screen, ALDOT has issued the permit and holds a performance bond for that work to install that northbound left turn lane and do all the necessary grading and drainage work. So that's, again, not a if it's going to happen, but just a when. So they are working with ALDOT, have already moved forward with that process, so that will be happening. Some follow-up activities required by staff and the applicant is to provide a copy of the recorded plat, a copy of the recorded O&M agreement, and a maintenance and guarantee agreement executed by the developer. The mayor signs this and fully execute it. Note the applicant, remember to include the instrument number for recorded plat and include 30 days in paragraph 3. Staff's recommendation is approval of SD 22.23 Live Oak Estates subdivision with the following conditions. Apply the 1-inch overlayment of asphalt and supply new test reports to be approved by the Public Works Director. Provide back T-test reports to be reviewed and approved by the Water and Sewer Superintendent. Add a future through street at Golden Leaf and Hardwood. Provide an invoice confirming that the pond has been stocked with fish. 5, provide a detail for the primitive walking trail to be approved by the Planning Director. 6 is provide subdivision performance bond and side subdivision performance bond agreements to be reviewed and approved by the Planning Director. And then 7 is confirmation of the current owner. I do want to note that the condition of approvals shall be completed prior to recording of the final plat, which is 120 days. And on a couple of these conditions, such as the performance bond and performance bond agreement, we have received agreements. We actually got them some revised documents a little later to go in to have reviewed. So that's why otherwise that normally is something that we have already had in hand. So this was due to us getting those revised documents to them. But on behalf of staff, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. And we have Mr. Joe Rector, on behalf of Mullins LLC, with us tonight to answer
Have
questions.
they agreed to do all of these? Do we have
Yep.
confirmation that they're going to do all of these? I mean, what's the difference between this one and the last one we looked at?
We have completed dates. You'll see a copy of the staff report in here, 44 items.
Okay.
And there's dates on when things were done, some of those things. And some of these are dual. There's no doubt. You know, this is fish in the pond is not a clear way we can, deny. So it's not really on a plan we can look at, but we know they got to be in there.
But if they're not done, will we not record the final?
We will not sign the final
will not
plan if
sign the
these
plat.
conditions are not done. Matt.
They have agreed, to go over these real quick, the overlayment, they have agreed to do that overlayment after they resubmitted documents to us, trying to prove that the samples were actually in compliance. We reviewed those and found that no, they were not, so required this. The back T-tests are on hold by the Water Department. They've agreed to the future through street sign. They have not agreed or disagreed with the stock pond. That was kind of a comment that came from the preliminary that was mentioned for the green space for that pond to actually be stocked. It is put in, sodded, landscaped. The walking trail, they have it. We don't believe that a mowed trail would quite met the intent of what needed to be out there. So we're requesting a detail to come in for that. It wasn't from lack of it not being there.
What's a more substantive primitive walking trail?
Mulch?
I mean, that's kind of an open-ended program. Do they know what you want them to do?
That's for them. The previous development had a rock/slag type there. It can
Like
be
Colony?
potentially a
Like the
mulching,
Colony
a
has
mulch
their
path
walking trail?
with some type of border that we know that's held in, not just dumping
They
out
understand
bags.
that's what you're expecting
Yep.
them to
That
do?
detail's going to be coming, Russ. We had a
We
conversation.
have discussed that.
And it is on flat areas, it's easy, but some of those are sloped areas, and how do you retain something? So we've asked for
Where you have
some
the border.
alternative. Yeah. We're going to need to, we live and learn. We're going to need to be a little bit more clear what a primitive path is in the future, not just mowing it down.
Yeah, there's a few, there are some instances where a mowed trail through a meadow can be a really cool thing if
Yeah.
you intend to have a huge meadow next to it.
Right.
But I'm sure they don't.
And the reason we know it's not stocked is not because Hunter tried fishing there and didn't catch anything, because according to that, the Mobile Bay's not stocked
we'd
either
always-
when it comes to those fishing
always
skills.
struggling.
And just for informational purposes, there are times of the year when you don't stock a pond.
Yes.
And there are times of the year when you do stock a pond, and it depends on what you're gonna stock it with. So, and a lot of times, depending on what you're gonna stock it with, it's got to be spaced.
And
Adequate
if we have an expert that tells us that the timing needs to follow this, where.
That's good.
But I want to be clear, I'm not putting performance bonds on fish,
Come on.
okay? Our maintenance bond.
I had a question about the letter that we received, because I didn't really understand where the person who said they had water coming up to their house and the silt fences were failing. Is that,
Doesn't say a name either.
well, at the end it says.
Said thanks.
Yeah, it
Wayne
is,
Haythorne.
we did receive a letter, so.
Did somebody look into that with the silt
Yes,
fences?
we've been monitoring, and there has been a lot of water.
Well,
went on.
let's hold off on this for a minute, because the person raised his hand back there. Let's open up
Perfect.
Okay.
Let him clarify.
let's open the public hearing and let people speak for themselves. Would somebody like to speak on behalf of the developer? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Joe Rector with Mullins LLC. And yes, whenever we came to you before, when we started this 2.5, 3 years ago, maybe with the PUD, we were working on behalf of Breland, who was doing the development. Since that time, and to answer your question about the ownership, Breland Homes has been purchased by Lennar Homes. And so the landowner transferred ownership to Lennar Homes. So that's how that transition of the name became from Breland, where it started with all the previous applications, to Lennar at this time. So yes, Lennar is going to be the builder on this. So these 7 conditions and recommendations have been approved, and they have agreed to those and understand those. And there's been talk with Mike and Hunter about the deals like with the path, because yes, that was one of the things. It is undefined kind of, and every builder has its own interpretation from all the communities that they build in and what that means. And it was welcome to see there was a definition of one on the previous project there that kind of, okay, well, that was a little more defined with the slag and everything, because one of the questions was put out, what are we talking about, mulch or something like that? And we had many discussions like, well, really the mulch doesn't work, because the first time it rains, all washed away anyway. So you get back to the mowed path. So we need something more defined, so everybody understands that. So I'll be glad to give it the rest of my time and wait till after the comments, and if there's anything I need to come back and clarify, we'd be really glad to do so.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Any questions for the developer this time? All right, thank you. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing at this time. Yes, sir. Okay. If you would say your name and your address for the record,
Yeah,
please, sir.
Wayne David Hathorn. 19251 State Highway 181.
Thank you, sir.
I just got a couple questions and concerns about the flooding that I'm already receiving. Not only am I getting flooded up front on 181, but all the water is running off of your property into the very back of my property. And the water's coming up on 181, and the back of my property where y'all's runoff is combining. And it's running underneath my house. How I know that is I had a termite guy come out a couple weeks ago and did my inspection underneath my house, and he said the moisture content was going up. Two, I've had to put some plywood around my vents on my house to keep from water not only coming up from 181, but approaching the back of my house as well.
Hey,
So,
Mike, can you put the map on the screen so he can show where his house is in reference to the subdivision, so we can get the developer up here to address that?
maybe you can help me out there, but I'd just like to know, is one of the drainage in the wrong location?
Is that your property with the arrow? We'll just have the arrow for a second.
On the
My
bottom?
property is right beside the detent pond.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. I wanted to know what you were talking
Yeah,
about.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I think this gentleman here's been out a couple times and knows a little bit what's going on too, as well. But maybe we can just go back to the drawing board and before we make the final decision or steps, whatever, just go back and look again. Because maybe the drain is too low, maybe it's too high. I don't know, but every time it rains, it's just a lot of water coming in the back of my property now. And not only that, I've lived on the property for 50 years. It's not like I just moved here. And so if we can just go back and look at that again, and I would appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it, huh?
All right, would anybody else wish to speak to this item? So if you'll state your address and your name.
Julie Comer, 9551 Bay Meadows. So I have a question or comment concern. So when this property was brought up, is it 2 or 3 years ago, right, when we originally talked about this, the traffic report that was done then, as we all know, the influx to this area, Firethorn across the street has filled up quite a bit. How does that traffic report that was done then hold up to now? And, I know a lot of us are concerned, how do we get a sidewalk on our street? How do we get speed bumps to help with that, with all the people that walk and
Which street is that you're
Bay Meadows, yeah.
I see. I can answer that. That's not really a developer's question. As far as the process goes, the traffic study is done prior. This is just to say, have they done what they said they were going to do with the preliminary plat approved? So now with more and more, and in 10 years, there'll be more traffic and so forth. The traffic study has to do originally with the traffic done prior, and that's when the design comes in. Now we're just looking at, was it built as the design required it to be built? As far as the sidewalks, I know that Single Tax is going to start building one. They tried to start day before yesterday, but too much rain. Should have started today, building one on Windmill Road. I don't know if y'all are Single Tax land over there or not,
Yes.
but the city of Fairhope, builds sidewalks. Sometimes Single Tax does if there's, good right-of-ways to work with, and it's something to look into. Or, if you get a number of people, each person build a sidewalk in front of their house. I think that Windmill Road project's about $18,000 connecting all the different sidewalks that each subdivision has. So, they're not that expensive to put them in front of, each person's house if people are willing to chip in on them there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And just on the traffic, what is mostly with traffic reports or what improvements need to be made? There is a signal at this intersection. There's not much more improvements you can make as far as what's installed, so.
At Windmill Road?
Here at Bay Meadows.
Yeah,
This
I'm at
is
Bay
the
Meadows, I'm
intersection
gonna
of
say yes.
Fairhope Avenue.
Right turn on, right? Is that correct? Left turn on?
Where did we land? Where did that land on they had a southbound?
So this is a northbound left turn lane
Left turn
that is
left.
going in, so that way at the time of the future signal, when the signal comes in, the signal will be able to operate with a northbound left turn arrow going on to Bay Meadows. Bay Meadows currently has speed humps on there. They do not have sidewalks.
Okay.
Have they moved dirt on this property at all?
Oh, yes.
They done-
Yeah, the roads and everything.
Still
there.
the subdivision.
Yeah.
So there was, I was trying to understand, the young man was saying something changed
So
from
let's.
baseline.
Hey, let me go ahead. Let's see if anybody else wishes to speak to this item. In that case, go ahead and close the public hearing and turn the meeting over to the commissioners. Corey. Go ahead, Corey. I wanted to
Yeah, I
close
was
that.
just speaking to the young man that was saying that there was more water coming. You're saying after they have done whatever they've done, they haven't seen.
a lot of the development done.
Gotcha.
But just a lot of the drainage system is worried about that it's failing now. We get more rain coming, it's fixing to get major problems. Where we can't, water's not going in the proper place now, there's just those couple drainage, it's going to be a lot more water coming out.
Right. I just wanted to.
Yeah. So if you could come back up. Do you see which lot we're talking about?
Yeah, I see which lot there.
Is that where your outfall is?
Well, no, the outfall is out to the front, because, so the pond was designed to your all's requirements, but then we had to actually go back and DOT required us to actually increase the retention and everything on this pond, so it actually exceeds your requirements. And I think that this is one of those things, like in transition, when these lots are all graded in, I mean, all of this is going to drain to these streets, they're going to drain to these inlets, and they're going to go into that stormwater pond that's going to retain that water. And like the gentleman said earlier, you know, the discharge rates on those are going to be less than what anything that's been in the past 50 years or anything out there on this. It's just when you have the infrastructure in for the roads, you don't have the lots graded yet, you don't have the benefit of how this thing's going to look when it's completely finished out and those roads and those lots are graded to go into those streets and make the whole system work the way it's supposed to.
So I thought the grading was completed by now.
Yeah, for the subdivision part of it. But I mean, I'm saying, when you have houses, you have pads, and those pads shape how water runs. I mean, they're not going to have water sheet flowing off of there onto, and I can't speak to what his specific thing is because I have never seen it, and I don't know what, he's referring to there. But I'm just saying, in general, how
Well,
the grading
what my
works.
concern is he's saying that the water is worse now since y'all have started than it was prior, and that's with no houses. And the answer of the houses are going to take all the water
No,
the
no.
other way. They may
That's not what I-
they may
that's
dump
what
it
I'm
his way.
Lee, can I add in, because I have been out to the site months ago, and Joe was not supposed to be here. I think the engineer that's
Yeah.
been monitoring the site is not here, so I really, it would be great to hear from him exactly on this. There was a lot of water on those sites prior to, we've got pictures of flooding before this construction started or right at the beginning. And we've been monitoring heavy rains. And I can tell you, front of those lots, I know Mike and I have both been, Mike lives close, every time a heavy rain, are those lots getting hammered? And haven't seen, the pond, once the pond was in, wasn't water getting in the front yards at least. I know we did go out on the site and it was brought up, some of the drainage coming off the sheet flowing off the site. I don't know what the details were with the engineers, but they did put some swales in and some mounds and even, I believe, another inlet to try to accommodate that drainage off that site. I can't speak to exactly what's done or whether water gets on. I mean, that's never a...
It is all flowing, it's like 30 feet higher than his house at the upper corner of that site.
I've not seen that pond, most of the time, pond doesn't even have any water.
No.
I mean, that is one of the reasons why you can't stop
Well, and when it
fishing,
was
but-
high-
But it's either sheet flowing above there, but the height of the pond, but that is that much better. It should be that much better for you as long as the inlets are working the way they ought to be working.
Well, and that's always a problem during construction. We require BMPs and wattles so that mud's not getting in and silt is not occurring.
The back of my property level and this subdivision stuff is like really high. And all the water's coming off the back of this big hill and running the silt fence and undermining and running the back of my property. And all that water's coming off their property, on my property, and right toward 181.
No, that's,
Right under my house, right underneath,
Well, it should be, all that water that's sheet flowing off there with the way those streets are designed, I'm assuming, ought to be going to
Right.
the retention pond.
and that's what I was really referring to. Whenever the time you get the wattles out, you get the inlet structures out and everything, and you have a functioning subdivision, that water is going in those streets and it's going in that pond. There's less water leaving that site than there was before this subdivision ever started.
But you're saying it's currently more than before it was there. I'm just wondering if we need, I wish the engineer was here. I
But
think I'd feel a lot more comfortable having the engineer meet. What is the address out there?
19251, State Highway 181. Sir, you're exactly right. Some of the water is coming off and going into their drains. They're working pretty good. But what happens is so much water coming off, that drain is being gobbled up by water, and my property butts up to it, and it just runs
not enough to handle the water,
kind of-
let's just say.
The inlet's being stopped up. It don't take much, then it just comes over the top of it. The silt fences are in the back of it, and the silt fence gets undermined the silt fence. You're going right, coming right,
Well-
back, up.
Yeah, silt fences don't do much.
So during construction,
Anyway,
but-
hay bales do, but silt fences don't. Yeah.
So you're saying, you're thinking the grading is going to change again and you've
Well,
already
no, what I'm
graded
saying
it?
is that the way that we're talking about finished product now versus the past, while it's being constructed, what's happening. Water running off the site, silt fences, different things like that. Today, we have a finished street subdivision. You get the wattles out, the water's going in the wattles, it's not getting stopped up, not overrunning, not jumping over and going down the silt fence. So that's what we're looking at today. We're not what happened during the construction to get to this point. This is the finished, it's been inspected, everybody's signed off, and go, okay, now it's in place and it's functioning right. And we don't expect to have flooding problems because
Just that the other day, just that little bit of rain we had for 4th of July, that sod that they put down, I got pictures of it already washed up against it. And it's already blocking that drain.
Sounds to me like you guys need to do some remedial work in terms of keeping the water on the, going into the retention pond, instead of coming across the backside of it and missing, coming out of the inlet pipe and continuing south. I don't know what,
I agree. I mean, we gotta, I mean, I don't think he would lie on you.
I mean, I got pictures showing
Yeah.
just the stuff they put down, a little bit of grass and all the erosion that's already coming.
Understood. Should we hold, Hunter, what do you think would be in our realm to hold this over for 30 days, have the engineer meet with the 19251 State Highway 181 owner? Because it may be that everything's going to be perfect because they had those pillow-looking things and keeping the water out of the drain inlet. But before the next, but
And our staff report was done before 4th of July, so yeah, I mean, there's erosion out there right now. That's not stabilized banks.
okay.
Yeah, isn't the soil supposed to be
You know,
seeded?
We
and
don't have
stabilized?
any reports that I'm aware of.
Well, I just, if this thing's already before the house is, you know, I mean, the engineer may just go out and say, hey, we had these things clogged up for erosion control, and once it's done, you know, we get a comfort level that everything's gonna be fine, but, or
well,
it
they
may
did
just
that
need,
because
it may
that's
just
why
need.
the engineer signed the thing to turn it in and say that it is. That's what we had to submit.
Was that before the 4th of July or after?
That was before the 4th of July.
Because
and
he
during
said that, he said the
construction.
4th of July, he already had an issue. So I'd like,
I don't know, I haven't seen any of that right now.
I mean,
when I don't know, I don't see where 30 days would hurt to just
well, I
have the
mean,
engineer
it's
meet.
it's 30 days does hurt though, because there's millions of dollars that have been put into building a development, and we've submitted and gone through a process and had a punch list and had responses to comments and meetings on site and inspections, and we've met those requirements. And my concern is that we have.
Well, my
You know-
concern is if we had the engineer here telling us, hey, we had pillars in these, what are those erosion things called that are
Yeah,
long?
there's the wattles.
If we had walls in and now they're removed and everything's gonna be fine, if he was there to explain to us and say, man, this thing meets and Mr. 19251's gonna have no problem, now I'd feel pretty comfortable. But without him here and Mr. 19251 says that, you know, 4th of July rain, 3.5 inches, and water's going underneath his house worse than before the development, then I don't have a real comfort feeling, and I'd just rather the engineer walk out there and look at it and make sure that,
Years later, we start filling these houses up, that throws more water all
yeah.
back to my property as well.
All he's
It's
asking
still
is-
got to be contained within the.
Yeah, it still has- it doesn't
the,
change.
Retention pond, though, no matter how you build it up,
Not,
100
not
feet.
every bit of water. So when we went out and looked, and I did have an engineer with me, that site sheet flowed to this property.
Yeah.
To which property?
To his,
this
Mr.
property of the
Hawthorne's
gentleman
property.
behind. And
He's
So you're saying it does go to this
it sheet flowed, yes. There was
naturally,
no
I mean,
development.
that's the
Right.
30-foot height
So
difference.
a lot of that water that was already sheet flowing is now, today, going to the detention pond. There was a section, I know, that was hitting those silt fences backing up. And they had an inlet, but, and this was 9 months ago.
What I do know is they went out, put some swales in to get it drained to that inlet that would send it back to the pond. I can't tell you what's happened from the 4th of July. I have no
Well,
idea.
get the engineer and see whoever y'all got to get.
I don't mind I'm one vote, but I don't mind voting to approve it subject to the engineer meeting with the neighbor. I don't mind voting to hold it over, but I think we need to do one or the other.
Well, that we've already got the other things, and we're already in the process of going to be doing the other things, so that would fit with the timeline of keeping things moving, because we have to do that anyway, and we can't get the plat recorded and
I
until
like
that's
the
satisfied.
idea of, subject to their engineer and someone with
Could
the.
we have somebody with the planning department meet with the engineer and the neighbor, Hunter? Would that be okay with you?
What are we trying to do? Because I don't think we're ever gonna.
Just look at it and make sure that there's not some screw up that, they built a berm, that they, built something up too high or cut something too low to where the water where it used to sheet flow and maybe got stuck behind this or that now it's coming, at a lot higher. I mean, if they could just, if just just one staff member, the engineer and the neighbor, just go look at it together and see if there's any low-hanging fruit or some
Yeah,
issue.
we're gonna pull our, Richard who walked out with me before, but yes, we'll
We
be
would
happy
do
to
that.
accommodate that.
Okay.
And we would
Confirm
do-
that it was constructed according to the approved design and plans that have already been approved. and so
Correct,
forth.
yes. All right.
The engineer gives his approval on what he has designed, that it's doing its job properly.
That it was actually flowing in the direction that it's supposed to be flowing, which is where I understand the pond.
Yeah, all right.
I mean, we would be more than happy to do that, because, yes, that's what they do with
that's
the
whole-
as-built in the whole
we're just out
certification
to-
process.
We understand, we're
Yeah.
not, we just wanna,
Yeah,
you know.
so we have no objection to meet them out there and doing that.
That'd be fine. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other comments?
So you
If
have
not,
to make your
I'll-
staff recommendations to that?
If-
What kind of clarification do you want on that?
I don't think we should be doing motions as group motions. That needs to come from one person. So if
No.
we need to talk about how
You don't
a
think
motion, if we need to talk about how a motion should read,
No.
let's do it before. the
Any other
motion.
questions or concerns? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Okay. We'll make a motion that, what's this, what, give me the.
30 days?
22,
It's
22.
SD 2223.
We'll motion that 22-24.
2224.
22-24.
23.
22,
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we'll make a motion in case 22-23, with staff recommendations from the engineer, to speak with the patron about the flow or drainage of water that is consistent with what we have here on the site.
So,
And the six.
so, yeah, he said that. So I have a motion to approve, subject to staff recommendations, as well as the engineer and a staff member will meet with the owner of 19251 State Highway 181 to make sure the design is, drainage is working properly.
As
For the
designed
design.
and properly.
Okay.
And do you agree with that? That was your motion?
I agree.
Okay.
Second.
Ally, you got that? Okay, a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay.
What was the motion again, Al?
Motion passes unanimously. You'll read it on the minutes. All right, SD 2224.
Amendment.
This won't take too much time. 2224 is a small subdivision amendment. This is to add an Appendix J at the end of the subdivision regulations to show what the previous amendments were. We've had, it's in our zoning ordinance where we have the previous amendments. This will also allow an engineer that may have not been here for 2 or 3 years, coming in to see what maybe has changed since they were last refreshed with that. So this will add that appendix to add the date, the case, and what that amendment was, and maybe a brief description of that.
All right, I'll open the public hearing. Does anybody wish to speak to this item? I will close the public hearing. Do I have a motion?
Motion, Mr. Chairman, SD 2224, move that we approve the resolution number 2022-03.
Four.
Second.
To,
It's three. Oh, it's three here.
Oh, resolution. I'm sorry.
But it's SD.
Second.
this is a motion.
Thank you very much.
Yes, this is a motion and this is a motion and a second. Under further discussion, this is on the subdivision reg, so this does not go to city council. So Corey, sorry you don't get to see this again, as excited as you'd be about it. So any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right.
Chairman, I move we adjourn.
No, we've got one old new business.
Hey, a movement to adjourn is never out of
Oh, I
order.
forgot.
That's Robert's Rules of Order.
That's right, it's true. So the flats at East Bay are what we were approved as Carmel Park Flats. So the apartments on Twin Beach, if you recall that. We had a condition on there that the improvements of the roundabout and turn lanes shall be installed before they get CO of occupied buildings, okay? So that's agreed to. They've recently got a building permit. The question, and I don't think it was what we contemplated, but they have a clubhouse there as well that's part of the amenities. And we don't know when the timing of the turn lanes on 98 are already in. The timing on the roundabout, I'm not sure. What our intent was with that condition is no one's living there. When we said occupied in that motion, we meant the apartments. It didn't necessarily mean the clubhouse is operating and, you know, they're going to use that as their staging and all of those areas, and literally an office while they're constructing. I want to be clear that I have made that interpretation. When we said occupied, we meant apartments. Anybody got a problem with that interpretation?
No, sir, boss.
No, sir.
Subject to them knowing they're still subject to the conditions.
Got that in writing, they've agreed to that. We do have a letter attached to their building permits that they
Yeah.
know that for every apartment. Just wanted to clarify the clubhouse.
That's fine. Goes back to John. All in favor say aye.
No discussion, or why you go to Robert's Rules when that happens?
Hey, these are perfect. These are I can